Hello and welcome to Salute Your Sports. I'm Kamen Enchev here with Tom Castleman. Bye week for Drew Brackett, but we do have a special show for you today. Our NBA playoff preview, full NBA playoff preview. We'll have all our first round picks and, of course, conference championship game predictions and the NBA finals themselves. Who's going to be the champion? Should be a fun show. I'm definitely looking forward to it. How are you today, Tom?
Doing really well. We do have the benefit of a couple of games as they started playing playoff games over the weekend, but I don't think long term that's really going to affect too many of our picks as we are getting underway with the first round here. And of course, the biggest matchup in the first round, Boston, the 2 seed against Brooklyn, the 7 seed. Basically, Common, we have this at the top of our show because it is the most hyped up playoff matchup for a first round that we have had in probably quite a few years. I mean, I know last week it sparked the discussion of, or the trivia question of, what is the lowest seed to go on and win an NBA championship? Because we have a team that is so rare in Brooklyn that has so much talent and yet is sitting so low in the standings, primarily due to just unavailability from some of its top players, most notably Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. So Boston took game one, 115-114, really, really close in the Garden. Where's it going to go from here? Is Boston going to be able to close out and win 3 more games, or do you think Brooklyn storms back and wins 4 of the next 6?
Yeah, doesn't this feel like a 7-game series, man? Because it certainly does. I mean, I think it's one of those that is definitely a 50-50 series. I think either team can definitely win it. Obviously, injuries will play a big factor, lucky breaks, stuff like that. But for me, I'm going to make the same pick I would have made prior to game one, and that's the Nets. Even though the Celtics won game one, I actually think game one kind of convinced me a little bit more that the Nets are going to win. Realistically, the Nets were going to go into Boston. Best case scenario was winning 1 out of 2. I don't think they were going to win both. Celtics won game one, 115-114 on a Jason Tatum buzzer beater layup. Fitting the Nets didn't play defense on that last play because that's the biggest question mark with the Nets. Like, can they play enough defense to win? They didn't on that last possession, that's for sure. But here's what happened in game one. Kevin Durant was 9 for 24 with 6 turnovers in game one. He's not going to play that bad again this series. No. I know Kyrie was hotter than maybe he would normally be, but KD is the best player on the team, maybe the best player in the NBA. I don't think he's going to play that bad. The Celtics, meanwhile, got 31 points on 9 of 18 shooting from Jason Tatum, 23 from Brown on 9 of 19, 20 each from Horford and Smart. They all shot efficiently as well. So all of Boston's best players played at their best level, and Durant played at his worst level, and Boston still only won by 1 at home on a buzzer beater. So I think the Nets, who've been a very good road team this year, I think they're going to take game 2. And they're going to keep going the rest of the series. I do think it's going to be a 7-game series. But think about this. As great as Jason Tatum is, and he's very good, but he's the 3rd best player in this series. Kyrie Irving this season, Tom, even though Tatum got a lot of love for some MVP talk, Kyrie played less games, but he averaged more points, shot better from the field and from threes and from free throws, and got more assists and less turnovers than Jason Tatum this year. I mean, by every statistical measure, Kyrie Irving is a better player than Jason Tatum right now. So the Nets have the 2 best players in this series. And you look at Boston, they're actually kind of similar in the Nets, that they have a dynamic duo that leads the way. They beat a lot of teams because of Tatum, because of Brown. I know Marcus Smart is a great defensive player. He won the DPOY, Defensive Player of the Year. I know that, they do have some good players like Horford and Smart. They played big the first game, but you look at their bench, they don't have a lot of role players that are great off the bench. I mean, you look at who they have, they got very little bench production. They were 8 deep. They really only played 7 guys. Derek White and Grant Williams are the 2 guys off the bench, unproven NBA players. So in order to beat the Nets, you got to really dominate them off the bench. And I don't think Boston has that depth to do it. I still think that Irving and Durant are better than Tatum and Brown. And while maybe the third and fourth guys might be a little better for Boston. They just don't have the depth in this series. Maybe they would if Robert Williams was healthy, but he's not. He's not playing in this series. So I do like the Nets to come back and win this series. I think it's going to be very, very close, but look for a lot of great performances from Durant and Kyrie. And Tatum is a little up and down. Brown can be a little up and down. They played the best they could. And I don't think, all due respect to Al Horford, he's an old guy. He's not going to be scoring 20 a game consistently. Even Marcus Smart, he's a solid player, but he's more of a defender. He's not going to be scoring 20 a game consistently. So I like the Nets to come back in this series. I think they've got a better squad. And I do think that they have the emergence of Bruce Bowen, I think, is going to help them. He's been better the second half of the year. So he's going to be an X factor in this series, sort of as that third option for the Nets.
Absolutely. And rebounding is going to be key. I mean, you mentioned Al Horford, no spring chicken, putting up 20. He also grabbed 15 rebounds. Another thing that I kind of like keyed in on for Kevin Durant was only 4 rebounds. I know that that's not his primary role, but, given his length, his size, and just overall athletic ability, definitely was just an off game all around. You mentioned, of course, the shooting, which he's not going to be as poor on that front. Couple, big names, not necessarily as talented as they once were. Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge did not play in game 1 on coaches' decisions. They weren't injured or anything as far as we know. So are they going to have a role going forward in this series? Even if it's just, hey, play, 10 minutes and you've got 6 fouls to just kind of like block up the lane for Tatum and Brown trying to drive to the basket, put a body on Al Horford so he's not as effective going ahead in the series. I like the Nets as well. I'm not as sold on them as I was earlier in the season, or even like right after they made that Ben Simmons trade, because I was kind of under the impression that Ben Simmons would be back by now and he would be a really, really big player. Just in what he does defensively, what he does in helping to distribute the ball, facilitate an offense, and put somebody basically on Jason Tatum. I mean, Kevin Durant, pretty good defensive player when he wants to be. And it's not necessarily just a lack of like desire, straight up effort, but he has to carry such a big load offensively. Having Ben Simmons definitely makes the series a lot easier for Brooklyn. So I don't know what his exact status is. It doesn't seem like anybody really knows. But if he can come back at some point in this series, that can be a game changer as far as Brooklyn's concerned. If they stay as presently constituted, I like Brooklyn in 7 still. I just believe in their overall talent and depth. But it's put up or shut up time for Brooklyn. Basically they came into the season with title hopes. They traded away all their depth to get James Harden a little while back, or I guess that was last season. Hasn't really worked out. I think they'd be in a lot stronger position if they had a lot more depth to back up Durant and Irving. But this is the bed that they've made. They got to sleep in it now.
I like that. A Castleman saying that's the bed that they've made. They got to sleep in it now. A couple of things real quickly. It's Bruce Brown on the Nets. I got my mind so confused with that great Spurs defensive player and corner shooter, Bruce Bowen. Bruce Brown, just to correct myself there. And also, Tom, Ben Simmons, you mentioned you don't know the status, and this doesn't necessarily mean anything because we know part of it is also, yes, he's officially cleared to play, by the way. He's cleared to return. Sure. Literally, that's a headline on ESPN right now as we speak. I know some of it is also, that's also the physique of like, can you run up and down an NBA game? It's also partially mental with him. But I do think he can be a contributing factor because he is a great defensive player. And that is kind of the Nets' one weakness. I certainly think his comeback can't hurt them because if he comes back and isn't useful, Steve Nash is not going to play him. So I just don't see that being a problem. So if they can get anything out of him, it's an upgrade. But I think it's going to be Kevin Durant. I think he's going to step up. But the one question mark for the Nets for me is like, this may be an unfair label, but I've never felt that Durant and Kyrie are great leaders. I've never felt that they make their teammates better. I've never felt that they inspire their teammates. And I think And James Harden was the same way, and Ben Simmons is the same way. So I do think that would be the one hurdle for them, like in a tight series. Like, what can those guys do to lift up their teammates? Because I think one-on-one, I think Durant and Irving, I would say they're both top 5 players in the league one-on-one. This is 5-on-5, and there's other factors that go into it. I will say this: Kyrie Irving has done really well against Boston in the past. He seems to have their number. Obviously, he played there. He knows some of the tendencies on that team. So I do think I expect him to continue to be great this series. Durant, I think, is going to be much better than game 1. So I think we agree. Nets in 7.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one more quick thing that I'm just noticing off the box score here. I know I mentioned a little bit of this with Durant. Part of the way you can lead is by pure effort, and that's what a lot of rebounding is.
Sure.
Boston out rebounded the Nets 43-29, including a 14-5 edge on offensive rebounds. So you talk about, Al Horford, the game he had. I didn't see, all of the plays and everything that he made, but I'm sure, a couple offensive rebounds and putbacks for easy points. So that's a great way to try to clean up the glass in the defensive end and get yourself a couple more opportunities. So Nets are going to definitely have to toughen up a bit if they want to come out of the first round and advance further in the playoffs. Another matchup we probably won't spend as long as this one, but it strikes near to home for both teams. Milwaukee just a short drive up on I-90. We've got the Bucks and the Bulls. Bucks winning by 7 in game 1 in a low-scoring affair. What are the keys to highlight here?
Yeah, so, first off, I think in the East, it's crazy because I think we have that Nets and Celtics series. The other 3, I don't know that any of those are a series. I do think that I'm not sure that we're going to see a sweep. If we do, this one might be it. I think certainly the Sixers with Scotty Barnes banged up for the Raptors, that could be a sweep. But I think the remaining 3 series are pretty easy to predict, especially given now that the Hawks have injuries. As far as this one, pretty simple. The Bucks have won 17 of the last 18 head-to-head games with the Bulls, counting game 1 in the playoffs, including all 5 this season. Chicago's only win in that 18-game stretch, by the way, Tom, the last game of the regular season last season when the Bucks rested Giannis, Middleton, and Holiday in the regular season finale. So last 17, the Bucks have won when they've played their good guys. They just don't have anyone to match up defensively against Giannis, just like they don't against Joel Embiid. The Bulls struggle stopping a great big man, and Giannis and Embiid just completely torched the Bulls. The Bulls would have been much better off against the Celtics and Heat, would have lost those series anyways, but the Bucks and Sixers are just a matchup problem. They couldn't stop Giannis in game 1, 27 points, 16 rebounds, and actually he was limited by 5 fouls. Maybe played a little bit less minutes, maybe that took away his aggressiveness, and he still put up 27 and 16. So I give the Bulls credit for playing tougher defense. I know DeMar DeRozan shot really poorly in the game. The Bulls shot really poorly, but the Bucks only made 15 of 23 free throws. They made just 10 of 38 threes for 26%. So yes, I know the Bulls are going to get better shooting, but so are the Bucks. Are you kidding me? If both teams shoot bad in the first game, who's more likely to improve more? It's the better team. So for Chicago, this series, if they can win 1 game, I think that's a success for them. I certainly don't think they'll be winning game 2, and I don't think they'll be winning this series. Give me the Bucks in, I'll say 5, but could be 4 for sure. Bucks should win no problem in the series.
Yeah, I'll basically just, flip the games on this one. I think Bucks in 4, maybe the Bulls can push it to 5 just because it's such a bad matchup for them across the board. I guess there could be, what is that called? Like the
Here we go.
Dead cat bounce or something like that.
Oh, I don't even know what that is. I love it though. What is it?
It's something along the lines of like the death rattle. I think it is. It's where you have like that one last spasm of for a sport team, could be down 3-0, game 4, Bulls go out and just, they're like, hey, we don't want to get swept. Go out, they win game 4, and then the Bucks just clean everything up at home. Like the Bulls could win that type of game.
Sure.
They definitely played a really good defensive game, but then the problem, like you said, was the Bulls weren't able to score themselves. Bulls have not been a great defensive team all season long. I mean, if you look at point differential, they actually gave up more points than they scored per game, giving up 112, scoring 111.6. Whereas you look at Milwaukee, gave up 112, but score 115 and a half. So I think that, there's a greater, progression to the mean, if you will, for the Bucks to improve over the Bulls on this one. So, I mean, some stellar individual performances could definitely change, but like you said, there's no matchup for Giannis. Drew Holiday can guard anybody he damn well pleases, and there's nothing you're going to do about it. He's probably my favorite player to be watching in the NBA right now, quite frankly, just because of everything that he does. So I like Bucks in 4. Bulls could push it to 5. That'd be interesting to see. But I think that's probably going to be like the first series done in the playoffs.
Okay, there you go.
All right, so moving on to Sixers and Raptors. So we actually have 2 games in the books on this one, pulling up both results. Game 1 was an ugly game, 131, 111, and then 112, 97. So not a great start for Toronto. We're not able to steal one on the road. Are they going to be able to defend home court, Comment, or do you see this one getting wrapped up in Canada?
This is going to be tight. Again, this is very tight. I would lean towards a sweep. And obviously this game, game 3 will happen sooner in this series than the Bulls series. So I actually think this will be probably the first series that is wrapped up. I mean, and you look at that score, that 15-point game in game 2, actually, they were like up a lot more. It's crazy to think about, but that score was actually closer than what the game actually was. And I think one of the big things here is Scotty Barnes was out for the Raptors last game. I know they're not maybe stars, but Gary Trent Jr. and Thaddeus Young are role players for them. They were doubtful in the last game. They played, but didn't play well. 2 points combined for those two. But for Philly, it's all about the emergence of Tyrese Maxey. He averaged 21 points per game in April, shooting better than 50% from the field and 3-pointers. So far, averaging 30.5 points on 69.7% shooting and 56.3% on 3 the first 2 games. Also, 6.5 boards, 5 assists. I mean, Joel Embiid is Joel Embiid. You know his numbers this series are great. It's a given. He's a legit MVP candidate, top 5 player in the game. James Harden is a former NBA MVP. He's not quite right now, but he's still obviously very good. I do think adding Maxey in there, though, makes it a big 3, which is something that maybe people didn't expect the Sixers to have. So I think Philly's better. They're healthier than Toronto right now. They're going to win this series. It's just a matter of whether it's going to be a sweep. I'm leaning sweep, but worst case for Philly, it should be a 5-game series. But Tyrese Maxey is absolutely balling out. I know we'll talk about Anthony Edwards, Jordan Poole later on. I mean, these young Bucks are playing great. And I'm not talking about the Milwaukee Bucks, which they're playing great too. Just the young players in the NBA in general. They're sort of taking the limelight of the playoffs and just going out there and doing their thing.
Absolutely. Well, this is kind of like we talked about, I think, a little bit last week, or at least we have in previous shows about, where along the life cycle are we for the big 3 as we've known it. And it might be a little bit on the downturn where teams might start saying, hey, we need 2 stars, and then we need enough good players who can step up and win a given game or step up and be that third player, as opposed to trying to get 3 established superstars playing together. Obviously, the talent's great. But in terms of like depth and value, we're seeing that might not really work out in Brooklyn this year. That certainly did not work out for the LA Lakers this year. So is this newer? Maybe not. It's not necessarily newer. I mean, everything we've seen in sports, we've kind of sort of already seen before, especially from a team building perspective. But are we going to see a resurgence of, hey, get 2 stars, Harden and Embiid, and get enough talent around them where somebody's going to be able to go off and win a game, which is important in a 4-game series, quite frankly. Your stars aren't going to win you every single game. You need the role players, or kind of like between star and role players, get you something. So 76ers already have, two home games in the bag. I know going to Toronto, I think it's Matisse Thybulle is the most notable player who's not going to be able to play. I'm not sure if anybody else in Philly is going to have any sort of issues with playing in Toronto. That's what kind of gives me pause to say the Raptors can win a game in Canada. I think they'll make it go back to Philadelphia, where the 76ers will clean it up in game 5 at home. Also, just role players tend to play better at home. I know that's like a really tired cliche maxim,
Sure.
but
It's true though.
it's true. The Raptors, have a team where they don't really have superstars, but they have a lot of really, really good players who are probably going to play a bit better at home than they have on the road. So I like Toronto to win a 1 game. I think 2 is a really tall order, especially like you said, Scotty Barnes being as important as he is to what they do. So give me 76ers in 5.
Yeah, I do want to
7-6-5. That works.
Oh, I see. I like what you're doing there. I like it. Tom, you would always be doing something like that. I do want to say this, Tom, and certainly there needs to be a greater sample size. We'll see what happens.
Absolutely.
But I actually think Tyrese Maxey is becoming an NBA star. I know he actually was a late first-round pick out of Kentucky, which is funny to think about because, Kentucky stars are normally lottery picks. And I do think the 2-star model, I think, worked for obviously the Suns and Bucks who made the finals last year. Middleton, I think, is probably underrated. I'd say he's a legit number 2. Maybe Holiday's also underrated as a number 3. So I think the Bucks are a little closer to a super team than maybe people think. And I also think I think Tyrese Maxey is legitimately an NBA star like Jordan Poole. I think those 2 guys could be guys that are all-stars in the very near future. So I think you're probably, I know like he's not going to average 30.5 points per game, shoot 70% from the field, 56% from 3, over his playoff career or his regular season career. But if he can even be like a 23, 24 point guy, like that's a superstar in the NBA. That's a Klay Thompson for you right there. So I'm really impressed with what this guy is doing. So I'm kind of like to the point where like, well, do the Sixers really? They do have a big 3, in my opinion. And I also think it's kind of interesting that it's a 4-5 matchup. Very rarely do you see a team so much better than the other one in a 4-5 matchup. I like Toronto's, like you said, Toronto's a lot of very good players. They don't have a single player in the top 15. Fred VanVleet was an all-star this year. Siakam is very good. He's like a borderline all-star. OG Anunoby, former Jefferson City High School guy. I mean, I used to do his highlights when I was in Missouri when he was getting 6 to 8 points a game. We would show on my Sunday sportscast every OG Anunoby bucket out there, and we'd say KRCG 13. We show more OG Anunoby highlights than anywhere else in the world. Now he's getting about 17, 18 a game, so too hard to get all the buckets in a local sportscast. But very solid players, as you mentioned, but they don't have that star power. They're literally a Kawhi Leonard away from being an NBA championship contender. Hence, they had Kawhi Leonard and won the championship with a lot of those guys or similar level players. So absolutely, Philly wins this series, no question.
Yeah, that brings us to Atlanta and Miami. Atlanta, not a great game out of their star. Trae Young made 1 basket, I think, if I'm
one field goal.
1 field goal. So not a great start. Does he get to rebound, heat up, and help the Hawks steal a game or maybe even 2? I know that they were a trendy pick as perhaps an upset team as Miami continues to get little to no respect from the public at large. There's just something about Miami, though, that they're going to shut people down.
Yeah, Miami's actually kind of like a better version of the Raptors. They're kind of similar in that they don't necessarily have a huge megastar, but their players are like right on the edge of being a megastar. Like Jimmy Butler is right on the edge. He's better than VanVleet and Siakam. Kyle Lowry, right on the edge of being a superstar. And they're a better defensive team than the Raptors are. So Miami's kind of like a greater version of Toronto. I kind of said that the Hawks could make this an interesting series, but I wasn't really thinking about the Clint Capella. I don't know exactly when his injury status update was. And I know John Collins is playing, but he's coming off an injury. I think that it's a tough matchup for Atlanta in the sense that, especially with those guys hurt, all due respect to Gallinari and all those other guys they have, but Trae Young is the only superstar on that team. And Miami is one of the best defensive teams. It's a lot easier when you can prepare for one superstar. That's essentially what they have to do in this case. And you saw it. Trae Young missed some open shots. He played a terrible game. He was what? I got it 1 for 12, 0 of 7 on threes. I don't think he's going to play that bad again. I think he's been playing so good down the stretch. He was due for a bad game. Combination of defense, but combination of shooters have off games. Steph Curry has off games. We saw he actually didn't shoot that great from three this whole season. So it happens. It happens. I do think Atlanta is a tough team, though. I think there's a sort of toughness to them. They like that underdog role. Obviously, they made the Eastern Conference Finals last year. So I actually think this series, Atlanta is more likely to steal a game than Philly or Chicago, in my opinion. I'd be shocked if it's a sweep. For me, it's just a matter of whether we're looking at 5 games or 6 games, because Miami's defense is too good. Miami has a lot of really good players. Hero, Duncan Robinson, Bam, Butler. They have a lot of really, really good players. They're like the Raptors, but they're just a little bit better at every position. They have no weakness. They don't have any weak spots. They have a great bench. They just maybe don't have a megastar, although Jimmy Butler at times in the playoffs does play like one. It seems like he does step up his game when he needs to, as we saw during their championship run in the bubble, championship run to lose in the championship, but nonetheless making the championship. So I like the Heat to win this series, but I actually would be surprised if Atlanta doesn't win at least just one game, because those guys are winners. They're great in playoff settings. The play-in tournament is a playoff setting. They won 2 in a row there. How much energy did they exert to do that? And Eric Spoelstra, by the way, has a really good record in game 1 of series. He's a very prepared coach. He had a clear game plan. I think they're almost better off losing by as much as they did, because then they have a lot more adjustments to make. Whereas if they lost a 7-8 point game, maybe they're like, it's not that big of a deal. But now they look at the problems they really have. So give me Atlanta to win a game, possibly 2, realistically, probably 1.
Yeah, I'm a firm 1 win for Atlanta in the series against the Heat. We talked about Trae Young, 1 for 12 from the field, 0 for 7 from beyond the arc for a total of 8 points. Bogdan Bogdanovic scored 6 points on 0 of 8 shooting. He puts up 15 a game in the regular season. So
sure.
There's a lot of regression to the mean in a positive trend for Atlanta, where I think, they'll take 1 at home. I'm pretty confident in that. The thing about the Heat, like you mentioned about them being a better version of the Toronto Raptors, and it just resonates with me so well, because without a superstar, it's really hard to say, the Heat can definitely beat Philadelphia in the next round, or that they can even, definitely beat Milwaukee or Brooklyn or Boston in the round following that. They definitely feel like a really, really strong team that I just don't really see them as true championship contenders. And that's a testament to Eric Spoelstra and the coaching that he does to get these guys playing at this level and believing in themselves, which is really all that matters. There's a lot to like about the Heat. I think they're going to make things interesting from the perspective of, I don't think they can beat Philly, but I'm going to watch to see them beat Philly. I'm really intrigued about them being kind of like the underdog top seed. It's a really interesting position to find an NBA team, because usually, the best teams are the ones that have the most talent as far as regular season record goes. So it's going to be interesting to see how Miami plays out further on down the line. But definitely think they're going to win in 5 games. I like Atlanta to get 1, but it's just going to be too tough for an Atlanta Hawks team that has a star in Trae Young, and then John Collins is his kind of sidekick. But Trae Young's isn't the level of superstar that you necessarily need to carry a team the way a Luka is, for example, who impacts the game in a lot of ways. Trae Young's great at shooting and passing, doesn't really give you much on defense, rebounding, as that all-around superstar. So I think the Hawks are a bit limited, can pick up 1 at home, but give me Miami in 5.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think Luka's better. I think you might be selling Trey a little bit, but I also think that he doesn't have, first off, his team doesn't play as good defense as the Mavericks, and he just doesn't have necessarily the teammates. I know he's not a rebounder, but he's a smaller guy. I mean, Steph Curry's not getting 10 rebounds a game either. So, I mean, you might be selling him a little bit short, but I agree with your general point, and he doesn't have help, quite frankly. So, but the next round is going to be interesting. So we're getting into who makes the Eastern Conference Finals, because you look at these next two series. I mean, first off, obviously, it could be Boston that comes out against the Nets, but whether it's Boston or Brooklyn that comes out, I mean, we would have what? Miami and Philly, and then you and I have Brooklyn and Milwaukee in the next round. So you look at those two series in the East, I would say they're both toss-ups. I mean, I think you got, four evenly matched squads, no matter who wins. I mean, you look at the top five in the East, they're pretty much evenly matched top five squads. The Nets, I consider in the top five, despite the seeding.
Sure.
So I'm going to go into the Nets Bucks series, because I think this is going to be a phenomenal series, as it was last year, a 7-game series, probably the best series in the playoffs last year. And I actually think, like, had the Nets beaten the Bucks, they might have won the championship against Phoenix. And that was crazy, because that was a second round matchup, just like this will be. So, so for me, I think this is tough. This is tough. It could go either way. I'm going to lean the Nets again, though, because I look at these two teams. The Bucks are pretty similar to last year's team. I know they've had a couple role player changes, but you look at the big three, you look at Giannis, you look at Middleton, you look at Holiday, even look at Brook Lopez, one of their starters. I mean, I think it's 4 of the 5 same starters. It is pretty much the same team. Maybe you take out a guy here, add a guy here, but it's a pretty similar squad. You look at the record and everything, they are roughly at the level they were last year. The Nets technically are worse if you look at the record, but I actually think they're better overall, even without James Harden. Not necessarily better than what they could be with those 3 guys, but they're better than the team that lost the 7-game series last year. Think about this. In that series, they were literally an inch away from advancing. Durant steps on the line. What was the game-winning 3 he thought was the game-tying 3, sends it to overtime, and they lose. But James Harden only played 4 games in that series, and he was so injured. He scored about 10 points a game, shot about 30% from the floor. So basically, they didn't have James Harden that series, because he was so hurt that it doesn't even count as having James Harden. Even with him struggling right now, 10 points a game and 30% shooting, it's like terrible for any NBA player.
Sure. Yeah.
Kyrie Irving for 4 games. So essentially, in this series, if it goes to 7, it goes to 6, whatever, 5, they will have Kyrie Irving, injury permitting, for more games than they had him last series. And I think that they're just a little bit more prepared, having played in the playoffs. I think Bruce Brown is developing into a solid number 3. But ultimately, for me, they can also get Ben Simmons, who can play some defense, another possible addition to last year's team. So I think the Nets are a little more dangerous. And actually, Kyrie Irving this season has played as good as he's been with Durant since they teamed up together. Kyrie Irving right now, if he wasn't hurt, you can make a case for him being a top 5 player in the league. He's played at an insane level. I mean, there's so many games where it's like, oh, Kyrie's 10 for 10 or 8 for 9. Like, he's got 50 points. He's got 30 points at the half. I mean, it feels like every other week we're seeing this stuff from Kyrie Irving. So I think Kyrie and KD are more built to be that dynamic duo compared to what they were last year. So I think the Nets are just a little bit better team than they were last year. And they were an inch away from making it past the Bucks last year. And they're a better road team. They've been really good on the road this year. So I don't really think the home court for the Bucks hurts them that much, that series. And I also think, as we like to say this, it's easier to make adjustments when you lose. I think they're going to make some adjustments around Giannis. Are they going to stop Giannis? Absolutely not. Just like the Bucks aren't going to stop Durant. It's just the superstars will dominate. But can they do just a little bit better than the insane stat line he put up last year? Yes, I think they can. And maybe that's where Ben Simmons comes in. They get Ben Simmons off the bench and they say, like, you know, we're going to throw Simmons at him. We're going to throw Durant at him. We're going to double team him. Because, I mean, for me, honestly, you got to double team Giannis. And that's what the Suns didn't do in the finals last year. Like, if Brook Lopez, you know, if Drew Holiday beats you by making threes, okay, that's fine. You cannot let Giannis get in the paint as much as he did. And he's going to get in the paint against a double team sometimes, but he's not going to do it like every time. So I think the Nets make adjustments. And I do think Kyrie Irving is playing at a much better level than he was last year. And I think that's going to be absolutely huge in this series. Not to mention Durant is going to be motivated. I mean, it's like Giannis is coming for Durant's throne. Like, people have kind of said, like, Durant's coming for LeBron. Well, now Giannis is coming for Durant. And honestly, Giannis might be ahead of him because he won the league MVP 2 years in a row. Then he won the finals MVP. Katie's got to be like, hey, man, you're great, Giannis, but, you know, I can do a lot of the things you can do, and I can shoot. Let me show you how it's done. I'm a much bigger fan of Giannis as a person, so I'll be cheering for the Bucks just because I love Giannis and his dad jokes. But as far as a player, I think Kevin Durant needs to take this personally. And I think he's better than Giannis, maybe ever slightly. And I think Kyrie Irving is definitely better than Chris Middleton or Mr. Drew Holiday. So give me the Nets in 7. It's going to be, I feel like the Nets are going to win in 7 games in all of their Eastern Conference series. I think those two superstars are hard to beat in the best of 7.
Absolutely. And it's a testament to how deep and how talented the East is that with all this talent that Brooklyn has, that there aren't any, you know, cakewalks, so to speak, that they are going to have to battle pretty much every step of the way. I mean, a couple other names on the Nets that we haven't really talked much about. Seth Curry and his ability to shoot from deep is going to be huge. And then it's just kind of like, who's going to step up in the post? You know, Andre Drummond starts at center, but, you know, can he get anything from Blake Griffin? Can he get anything from LaMarcus Aldridge? I mean, that's the one weakness, I think, for Brooklyn is just post defense, rebounding, because that's where the Bucks are really, really strong. I mean, you obviously have Giannis, who is all world as you know, a really mobile, amazing big man. But Brook Lopez, you know, he'll give you some work, you know, even off the bench. Bobby Portis makes that a real challenge for Brooklyn to overcome. Basically, I mean, this is going to be true regardless. The Nets have to really outscore everybody, and one team that's going to be difficult to do that against is going to be Milwaukee. So I like Milwaukee.
Different.
I like Milwaukee a lot. I think I will stick with Brooklyn.
Oh, I thought you were going to go Milwaukee on me.
I'm really tempted to. I could go either way. Like, this is going to go to 7 games. It could go to 9 games. It could go to 11 games. I would not really feel great about picking a winner.
Sure.
In this series, I'll give a slight edge to Brooklyn just because Durant's going to continue to round into form. Kyrie Irving is much better now than he was last year, much more available than he was last year. And then Ben Simmons, if Simmons can be the guy who kind of slows down Giannis a little bit,
just a bit.
That's all you need. That's all you need. Like you said, it was an inch last year that separated the Nets and the Bucks from going on in the playoffs. So I'll take the Nets, although I'm not super happy about it. I like the Bucks a lot as well. I really wish they were meeting up later, but I think we'll have a much more interesting storyline potential to come out of the other side of the Eastern Conference bracket.
Yeah, one thing, Tom,
going to go there. Go ahead.
Yeah, one thing before we move on to the next one, just one name that we've mentioned a lot of names here. Mm-hmm. One name we haven't mentioned is Patty Mills. What does Patty Mills have? Championship experience with the Spurs. What does Patty Mills have? A lot of big game experience at the Olympic level. If you watch any Olympic basketball for Australia, seems like Patty Mills is always balling out. I mean, Team USA goes up against Patty Mills. It's Patty Mills raining threes left and right. Even in his like small conference, I think he played for St. Mary's, was it in college? They were very successful. They were winning a lot of like conference tournament games. Like, that's a name. You talk about Curry shooting threes. Well, they also have Patty Mills now to shoot threes, who has the playoff experience, who has that clutch factor. So it makes it hard, you know, to double team Durant and Irving, because I think they've got some guys who can knock down shots. So that's one name to think about for the Nets as well.
Absolutely. So who do you have facing the Nets? We're going to have, as we're calling it, 76ers and Heat facing off. Who do you like coming out of that series, Common?
Another 50-50 series, man. Like, I honestly, like, it's so funny. It's so funny that we have Boston out in the first round where, like, Boston could end up winning the whole championship. That's how close these East teams are. I mean, Miami is the 1 seed. 76ers are the 4 seed. I think they're both really, really close. It's just, it is a close matchup here. But I struggle with it, but I'm going to go with the 76ers. And I think the 76ers, to me, have too much star power. It's kind of like what we were just talking about with the Nets having the best 2 players against Boston. Well, Philly has the best 2 players in Embiid and Harden. I do think this will be a difference, like, because Harden's off right now. You look at how much he struggled in the month of April. You look at how his shooting has struggled early in this series. It's going to be a matter of, like, what James Harden can we get. If we get NBA MVP James Harden, the Sixers might win the whole thing. I don't think we're going to get that James Harden. I also think we are going to have a James Harden that's, shooting better than, 30-35% from the floor. I think if he's getting about 20 a game instead of like 15 or 16, they're much more suited. So I think that if we get that James Harden, which I expect to see, because here's the thing about, the 76ers got a lot of pressure on them because Embiid has little to no playoff success, like as far as team success. I know, obviously the star player gets scapegoated. I'm not saying he hasn't played some good games. Same deal with James Harden. He's played some great playoff games, but like, have these guys played in the finals? I guess Harden did once when he was very young as a clear number 3 with OKC. But since he's been the number 1 guy, he's been a part of some good teams, has not made the finals. Embiid hasn't gotten close to the finals. So those 2 guys have a lot of pressure on them. I don't want to accuse Harden of coasting. I don't know if that's what he's doing. But I just feel like is kind of, maybe to an extent, saving it up a little bit more as we get deeper in the playoffs. Because I thought it was kind of weird. Like, you look at his first few games with Philly, he did so great that you're like, oh my God, these guys are unstoppable. And then what happened? Like, he significantly slowed down. It almost felt like he wanted to set the stage and be like, hey, I'm here. I'm taking over. But now that, like, it's gone by, he hasn't played as well, but maybe he's due for some better basketball. I do think that Philly stars are better. And I do think that, believe it or not, in the modern day sports world, great offense beats great defense. Miami has great defense. I don't think they have an answer for Joel Embiid. I know Bam Adebayo is a great player, but Bam is not as big as Joel Embiid. I just don't see him shutting down Joel Embiid. So I like the Sixers, but Miami's dangerous. Miami is definitely dangerous. Give me the Sixers in a close series, which could, again, go 7, should go at least 6 for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm going to kind of double down a little bit on what I said in the previous segment, where I just don't necessarily fully understand how the Heat are as good as they are, how the summation of their parts are better than all the individual components. I mean, if I had to pick it, it'd be, 76ers in 6. I think I'd be pretty confident for that. I don't think Miami's bad enough to go out in 5, but I kind of find it, I kind of see a little bit more difficult for them to win a series, with, of course, the natural caveats of we haven't had that Joel Embiid major injury this year. James Harden's hamstrings are okay, but he's had issues with that earlier this season. There is always something that could pop up, but if both teams are going at this, at as full of a strength as they currently are operating, I like Philly in 6 games just because better overall talent, better overall scoring. Maxey, of course, stepping up is huge for them. We haven't even really touched on Tobias Harris and what he brings as a stretch 4, and really forcing defenses to not crash in on Joel Embiid as much as they otherwise would like to. And I think, Joel Embiid, not super high assist numbers, not, Jokic or anything like that, but he's capable of passing out of the post. So if you are throwing help down to Bam Adebayo on Embiid, he's going to be able to find open shooters. And the 76ers have quite a few of those that are going to be capable. I mean, Danny Green, he can even dunk on occasion, but he's going to be a spot up shooter that's going to be big for the 76ers. So I like the 76ers coming out of the semifinals to play in the conference final.
Another name, Danny Green, like Patty Mills, former Spur with championship pedigree. Also with the Lakers. I think, was he with the Lakers during that run?
Briefly.
Yeah. UNC Tar Heel national champ as well. To talk about a guy with pedigree. And Tyrese Maxey, I meant to bring him up. I know I brought him up in the last segment, but I think his emergence gives the Heat another guy to deal with. So I also like the 76ers. Looks like we have, the same Eastern Conference final matchup?
Pretty much, yeah. We've got Brooklyn and Philadelphia, which is kind of where I wanted things to go all along. As soon as that trade was made in season, I think that is going to be thrilling theater to watch as far as Nets over 76ers. I mean, I picked them preseason, so dare I stick with them? I think I do. I actually, I'm going to stick with the Nets over 76ers on this one. I will say, I'm picking the winner of Brooklyn, Milwaukee to come out of the East. I don't think that either Miami or Philadelphia is strong enough. I mean, it's kind of like Philadelphia is a really, really tough team, but I think that, Brooklyn has obviously the firepower, the talent to go up against them. It's just a matter of who stops Joel Embiid. And if it's Milwaukee, I mean, I think Milwaukee matches up exceptionally well with Philadelphia, where Giannis and Joel cancel each other out, and then it's Drew Holiday and or Chris Middleton canceling out James Harden. I think they kind of more than do that because Milwaukee, has that superstar that Miami doesn't have and is also, some greater than the individual parts. But sticking with my conference winner, I'm going with Brooklyn because Kyrie's playing exceptionally well. Kevin Durant is not going to play as poorly as he did game one against Boston. They're just going to be able to put the ball in the basket more than Philadelphia is going to. And we could talk about all sorts of different, metrics and statistics. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. The only question for Brooklyn is if they can find an answer to, not necessarily an answer to Giannis, but an answer to how do we do enough against Giannis. I think they can apply a similar thing to Embiid and find a way to win a series. So give me Brooklyn all the way out of the East, even though, given the way that you and I are going, they're going to flop against Boston. We're going to have a whole different playoff conversation over the next couple of weeks.
We have definitely jinxed them. That is for sure. Andre Drummond, by the way, Tom, you spoke about him earlier, one of the best rebounders in the league. So think about that, like when it comes to size. Sure. I know there may not be the depth, but like Aldridge, Griffin, those guys can rebound the ball too. So
rebound, but he's not really a good on the ball defensive player in the post.
That's fair.
So that's where fair. Joel and Giannis are going to eat for sure.
Sure. So yeah, we're not only double jinxing, we're triple jinxing because Drew Brackett has also picked the Nets to make the finals, come out of the East. That does give me a little bit more breath of like fresh air because Drew did predict the Bucks last year to make the finals pretty much the whole season. So the fact that Drew's on our side does give me a little bit of sort of like positive thought because I think Drew's predicted the last NBA champ before the season started in the Bucks and the playoffs. He also had the Rams the whole way. I think you might have as well, though. But
I did.
Drew's on a roll right now. So I like that Drew's picking the Nets. I'm going to pick the Nets as well. And this will be a wild series because by then, assuming there's not injuries or major issues, Ben Simmons should not only be playing, but he should be assimilated, a Tom Castleman word for you, into the rotation as much as he's going to be. It'll be interesting to see if he's just a bench player 15 to 20 minutes, or is he going to play? Like, is he going to start, or is he going to play? Even if he comes off the bench, is he going to play 30 minutes? I mean, so it'll be interesting to see where he is. But at that point, he's going to be at his best level. Imagine him going into Philly and they're booing him and they're going crazy at him. On the other side, you have Harden, who left Brooklyn, they're booing Harden when the Nets are at home. It just sets up for so much drama. I mean, that's definitely the series that I want to see. And maybe that's a part of like my heart and my instincts. Maybe they're telling me like, what series do you want to see coming? Maybe that's what's guiding our picks, because I think there's a lot of toss-ups.
Absolutely, yeah.
You got to think about this game that they played earlier this season. I know that, you don't want to look into one game too much, but the last time they played, the Nets went into Philly and won 129-100. They seemed that they wanted to make a statement. We're going to win this for Ben. We're going to win this, against James. We're going to show it up in his face. We're going to rub it in his face. And I actually think they're going to go for that mentality right now. And I think that Kyrie is actually more of a killer than James Harden. And actually, when that trade was made a few years ago, I think James Harden was at a higher level than Kyrie Irving. But right now, right this moment, Kyrie Irving's a better basketball player than James Harden, given that Harden just isn't quite right. He's not quite right. And for the Philly to beat the Nets, they will need NBA MVP level Harden. And if that's the Harden that shows up, Philly's going to win. But I'm going to go with more recency stuff that I've seen. And I'm going to say that's not the Harden that we have. And as good as Embiid is, I give a very slight edge to Kevin Durant over Embiid. I give the edge to Kyrie Irving over James Harden. So I look at the best 1-2 duos. Durant and Kyrie are better than Embiid and Harden. So I like the Nets in that series. So, I mean, look at this. I got this written down, Tom. In April, James Harden averaged 16 points per game, shooting 36% from the field and 27% on threes. Like I said, maybe he was coasting a little. I think those numbers should improve. But how much can they improve? Because James Harden has never been the most efficient player. Like, he's not Russell Westbrook level, but, he's not a guy that's going to shoot, 42% from three or 50% from the floor. Like, he's a good shooter. He's a great scorer. He's a great dribbler, but he's not a lights out shooter. And I think it's harder for him to get his rhythm as a shooter when he's the number 2 scoring option on his team. And that is why, like, we've seen James Harden scoring champ. Like, he's willing to be the passing guy, but like his scoring ability, just for like any player, like we'll talk about this with Jordan Poole coming up in a little bit. I have a lot to say about him, but I think the more shots you get, the more looks you get, and your mindset to score. When you're in the scoring mindset, it's a lot easier to score. So James Harden is still an elite level passer because he's an elite level player because he can pass the ball. He can get 10 assists a game, but James Harden's going to have to be shooting at his very best. And I think that doesn't work for him when he's not the number 1 option. That's why we're seeing his shooting numbers are significantly lower than they used to be when he was, a league MVP. So that's something to think about. Meanwhile, like Kyrie and KD, oddly enough, seem to have that dynamic down. Like, who knows what's going to happen, last possession of the game. That may not happen in the future, but they seem to have it down where, you'll get yours, I'll get mine, and their rhythm seems to be fine. I don't think that Harden has that same rhythm with Embiid. And think about this, KD and Kyrie, granted, they haven't played together a ton because of the injuries, but they have played together more games, and they've been around the same facility, now for what, 3 or 4 years? I know the first year they joined up together, I think they were both injured, but they've been in the same organization for significantly longer than Harden and Embiid have. So I think that has to help the Nets as well. So I'll take the Nets. You'll take the Nets. Drew's going to take the Nets.
Boring.
We'll see if we have the triple jinx. We are on the same page with everything today, Tom, which is going to either make us look as a show really smart or really dumb. We'll see.
We've looked both ways before.
Yes, we have. Looked good on the Super Bowl this last year, but there's definitely been examples where it's been the other way. It's totally 50-50.
We are the embodiment of the human condition, if we want to get a little bit meta here. But instead, we'll go out to the West, where we've got the Utah Jazz and the Dallas Mavericks currently tied up at 1 game apiece. Jazz taking game 1, Mavericks taking game 2. The big storyline, of course, so far for Dallas, no Luka Doncic. So Has Utah blown its opportunity to really take control of the series by winning games 1 and game 2? Just a quick update on Luka. Last I checked, he is questionable for game 3 and game 4, so he could come back for either, both, neither. That's still up in the air as far as his health goes. But regardless, do you see Dallas having a chance to kind of survive an injury to their most important player, or does Utah go ahead and seal the deal in this series?
Well, I think this is probably, along with the Nets Celtics, there's a reason why this is the first game we're talking out west, the first series, because this is a complete toss-up. This series, just like the Nets Celtics. And I know this is a cop-out answer, but it goes down to what Luka Doncic are we going to see? Because I think if we see Luka Doncic at least 90%, and he plays in at least 4 games in this series, the Mavs will win. Because with Luka, they are the better team in this series. Without him, like, great win this last game. I think that Jalen Brunson is really good in that role, running the team, you know, scoring over 30 points, getting a bunch of assists, but I don't think he's going to play that good consistently. So without Luka, they're not going to win this series. I will say this, though, one thing, Jalen Brunson, by the way, averaging 32.5 points per game in this series. You know, former college guy that was, you know, another championship level player, but he's very good. He's not going to average 32.5 points per game over this series, though. So long term, like, you know, that's how they win. They play good defense and someone goes off. Usually it's Luka. I do think the Mavs aren't getting enough credit as a team besides Luka, though, for this reason. They are one of the best defensive teams in the league, allowed 104.7 points per game this year, which is the second best in the NBA. Much like that, I think it was it 07, whatever year LeBron took those scrubs all the way to the finals. That Cavaliers team had very little offensive talent, but they were one of the best defenses statistically. That is something that's lost in this Dallas team. Like, they don't have much offensive talent besides Luka, who is a top 5 offensive talent in the game, but they have a lot of defensive talent. And that's something that's not talked about enough. Dallas is 17-6 since the All-Star break. Best record in the West. Boston 17-5 in the East. I guess a half game better. So they're a better team than people give them credit for. I think that the Mavs, if they played the Nuggets, like, you took out Jokic and you took out Doncic, I think currently without Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., obviously those guys play might be different, but the current Mavs team would beat the current Nuggets team, in my opinion. So I think Luka has a little bit more than Jokic because of the defense. I do think the Jazz also play good defense, though, and they're a great home team. So if the Jazz go up 3-1 in this series, they will win this series. If the Mavs get it to 2-2, and that would be if Doncic plays, which I think my gut says he's going to play. My gut says they're going to get it to 2-2. My gut says that it's going to go to 7 games in Dallas. And Luka, the #1 all-time scorer in playoff history, by the way, more points per game, small sample size, but more points per game than Michael Jordan. I think he's a competitor. I think Luka's going to find a way to play. And think about this, like, obviously, like, the healthier you are, the better you'll play. But Luka doesn't dominate because of his athleticism. He does it because of his craftiness. And, like, sure, those body movements, if you are hurt, it'll be harder to be crafty, but it's not like he was blowing by people and dunking. He does do it sometimes, but, like, his strength is, like, his passing ability, his shooting ability, and just his craftiness near the rim. And I don't think you lose those as much as opposed to, like, a guy who's like if Russell Westbrook got hurt, he'd be slow because he can't do anything else but use athleticism. He'd be out. Like, he would have no influence on a series. Luka, maybe at 80%, I think he's higher than most guys. So maybe it's my heart talking, but give me Luka to come back and give me Luka to lead the Mavs in a tight series against the Jazz. And the Jazz don't do well in the playoffs, by the way. They're a classic team that tends to do great in the regular season, not so much in the playoffs. They finally weren't great in the regular season this year, and they might be out in the first round.
Now, I think this might be the first point in which we're disagreeing, as I'm going to go
Mm,
with Utah on this one. I mean, Luka
okay.
obviously can't count on his health. And even as you said, like him coming back, I mean, calf injuries are no joke. So how effective is he going to be? Grant, he doesn't rely on the athleticism as much, but that also kind of means he needs every little ounce that he can get. And if he's
Sure.
just, not in that sort of position, if something happens where he's consistently getting switched and like screen and roll, something like that, and put on somebody like, say, Donovan Mitchell, is he going to be defensively? That's not his strong suit. But is he going to be able to keep up, or is he going to get kind of exposed and perhaps put at risk for injury there? The thing I was like looking at prior to the series, that really I like keying in on his point differential. And over the course of the regular season, Utah Jazz are +6. They score 6 points per game more than they give up. Looking at Dallas, that's a 3.3 margin that they have, scoring more than they give up. So I don't like it doesn't feel like Utah has played particularly well in spite of having a really, really strong point differential. So I think there's a little bit of value there, so to speak, in terms of them being able to kind of, win like the mini upset that is the 5 over the 4 seed. So I'll take Utah. I think Donovan Mitchell, he's scored a lot of points, but he's been doing it shooting right around 30%. I think that number is going to go up a little bit. I know he's a volume scorer by trade, but there has to be some sort of bounce back for him. He's too good of a player to not have that bounce back. And of course, can't talk defense without talking Rudy Gobert and what he's going to be able to do to affect this series. So I like Utah, probably a really close 7-game series, though.
Two things. I think it's Kleba. Is it Kleba? Max Kleba, I think. I might be saying his last
Yeah,
name wrong.
yeah,
But
Maxi
he's
Kleber.
he is like a stretch 4
Mhm.
for the Mavs. He's actually going off this series. Went off last game. Had more than 20 points. He's actually a really good wide open 3-point shooter.
Sure.
And he actually makes it hard on Gobert to defend. It's weird that you think about like a role player that makes it hard on a former Defensive Player of the Year award winner. But Gobert does his damage near the rim, and he's having a hard time getting out there and guarding the 3-point line. So the options are like you either keep letting this guy rain shots on you, or you get Gobert out of the rim, which then opens up a lot more paint points for Dallas. So oddly enough, it's a role player for the Mavericks that's creating a matchup nightmare for the
Well,
Jazz.
well,
Um,
looking at his numbers here, let me
well,
go for regular
well,
season. Kleber shoots 32.5% from the field. 8 for 11's quite a bit better than that. So,
sure.
I mean,
He's heating up though.
obviously that could be a significant thing. I could also see a regression to the mean though, where
Sure.
if you're not shooting 46% from the field, if you're Dallas, and if you're not getting 41 points from a role player in Jalen Brunson, you're not winning game 2. So it kind of feels like you got
Sure.
what you needed to kind of steal that win on the road, and without Luka, that's really impressive. Is that going to be consistent enough? Is that going to be present enough through the rest of the series for Dallas to win? That's why I like Utah a
Sure.
little bit more.
And it may not need to be if Luka comes back, though. One other
Sure.
stat, Tom,
Hmm.
actually, it's just funny that I actually didn't even have this written down, but I remember seeing it last week, and I should have gotten the exact number on the records, but I do know this to be statistically accurate. And this speaks to the stat that you had. The
Hmm.
Jazz are +6 in point differential. That's because when the Jazz are winning, they're cruising. If this, let this sink in. If they played 3 quarters in the NBA, the Utah Jazz would have the best record in the NBA this season. They have faltered down the stretch in the fourth quarter time after time after time. And, you talk about a team that's had a bunch of regular season wins. Utah Jazz don't win the NBA Finals. Even with Stockton and Malone, they couldn't win the finals. They don't have Stockton and Malone right now. So that's a squad that's not good in the clutch. They were winning in the fourth quarter against the Mavericks last game. What happened? Donovan Mitchell, brick, 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 brick in the fourth quarter. So maybe the Jazz clutchness is something to be considered. And
Hmm.
Luka Doncic, we know, is pretty darn clutch. They get Luka back. Maybe he's not at his best, but at the end of the game, we see that Luka magic, as they say. I think Dallas is going to win this series if they can get
Well,
anything remotely from Luka. Now, if Luka comes back and is a shadow of himself, I agree the Jazz will win. but I'm
Well,
expecting Luka to be a warrior.
well, in terms of like clutch, has Luka won a playoff series? Did they
He's
get
been
one?
he's been great. I think that I agree they haven't won, but I think that the
Mhm.
team is a little bit better than years past. But
Okay.
yeah, that's true. They haven't won, but he's hit the game-winning shots. You remember that shot against the Clippers? Oh, in
Sure.
that NBA bubble. Oh, that was beautiful. Luka Magic. You do bring up a good point, though. And it's just ironic because these are two of the teams that haven't done well in the playoffs in
Mhm.
recent years in this first round series. So who can you really trust? We'll find out.
Exactly. Well, a team that we thought we could trust heading into the playoffs for certain was the Memphis Grizzlies, a team that was actually stronger record-wise without their superstar in Ja Morant than they were with him. Of course, they're not literally a better team without Ja Morant on the
Sure.
floor, but a bit of a surprise. The Timber Puppies going out and winning
I love that
game
name.
one on the road against the Grizzlies. Anthony Edwards, fantastic. Karl Anthony Towns putting together a good game after having a dud in the play-in games against, I believe it was LA. So, do we see another 2-7 upset here, or does Memphis kind of round back into form and take this one in 5, 6, however many games it takes?
Well, it's not going to be 5 because I don't think they're going to win 4 in a row. I do think this is an exciting series. We have two of the best young teams in the NBA and some of the best young stars. I mean, Anthony Edwards, talk about a star is born, 36 points. That was tied for the fourth most ever in an NBA playoff debut. Karl Anthony Towns, 29 points. One thing to look at, though, Malik Beasley, 23 off the bench. I don't think he's going to be scoring 23 a game. You talk about regression to the mean.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a series that really could go either way. I actually think this could go to 6 or 7 games. The Timberwolves are really, really confident right now. The way they played in the play-in tournament and their crowd in Minnesota. I know, the fans and the players got some flack, which I thought was completely stupid. Let them celebrate.
Yeah.
We're grown men. Let them celebrate. I don't care if Patrick Beverly wants to get up on the table like LeBron, Kobe, like D Wade. Let them celebrate. Let them have some fun. You just made for the playoffs for, I think, the second time in the last 18 years for Minnesota. Pat Bev took out his former team, the Clippers. Let them have some fun. I think that Minnesota is just got a really positive energy about them right now. They really do. I think this is a series that I'm going to say it's going to go 7 games. I think it's going to go 7 games. I think that there's a lot of similarities in the two teams, a lot of young athletic players. I do think Memphis is ultimately going to win the series because I think one thing that Memphis just seemed to forget to play in game one was defense. There was way too many open looks. Anthony Edwards is a good shooter. Maybe they didn't want him using his athleticism, but I'd say he earned it the way he shot the ball from the outside in game one. I don't think he's going to get that many open looks the next game. I think that, 130 points is a lot. That is a lot of points. That was obviously a great offensive game for Minnesota, but anytime you put up 130, obviously the other team didn't play defense. And that's the main difference between these two teams. They can both score the ball. I think Memphis, if you look at what they did in the regular season, a better defensive team than Minnesota. Minnesota just doesn't have it on that end. And I think that, they're going to need to score 130 a game to win this series. And I don't see them consistently scoring 130. Not to say that they won't do it again. Not to say that we don't have triple overtime in this series and they get there, but consistently, can they average 130 a game over 4 games, which is what it would take to win this series? I don't think so. But I do think I think the T-Wolves do have the best 1-2 duo in Towns and Edwards. It is a great 1-2 duo. And I think that Ja is kind of settling back in. I think that he's off of an injury. Maybe he's not quite right. He looks good, but it takes a little bit of time. It may take a couple games. And I think it was kind of a good wake-up call for Memphis with all the winning they did the second half of the season. The playoffs aren't easy. These are two new teams. Two teams, for the most part, who have very little playoff experience. There is some players who've played in the playoffs, but you look at the main core of those teams, they have little to no playoff experience, and that's going to be a key factor who responds better in the playoffs. In game one, it was Minnesota. Overall, I still think Memphis has a little bit more talent, and they're a little bit better on both ends of the court. So I do think they will win this series, but a 2-7 upset would not surprise me here. I'll say that for sure.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you because you mentioned, Beasley putting up 23 points. Well, D'Angelo Russell only put up 10. So one's going to go up, one's going to go down type of thing. I mean, the Timberwolves definitely put the Grizzlies on notice. I mean, the thing that I was kind of going back and forth on this series heading in was like, Minnesota playing really, really well after the midway point of the season. Their second half far better than their first half. And Grizzlies, I wasn't really sure how they were winning all these games with Ja Morant out. I mean, I know they have good depth, but if we were to do like an individual player draft out of, these two teams, I mean, Ja Morant would go number one. I'd be tempted to say, Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards go 2, 3, and then maybe even D'Angelo Russell goes 4 just on like pure talent.
That's fair.
I'm like you. I would not be surprised at a Timberwolves, upset in this series. Just kind of like looking at the numbers, Memphis only shot 26% from 3. They're going to shoot a little bit better as the series goes on, especially against a team in Minnesota that isn't particularly strong on defense. And how about this for a stat line? Steven Adams did not attempt a single field goal and only grabbed 3 rebounds. That's not a typical line for a player like him. So look for him to have a bit more of an impact as well. He only played about 24 minutes. But in order for Memphis to have success, he's going to have to kind of bully Karl Anthony Towns a little bit. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns, a great shooter, won the 3-point contest this year, definitely a dynamic offensive player. If you want to kind of work on him on that end, you got to play good defense, but you also got to make him work on the defensive end, make him work for rebounds. Basically, Memphis has gotten where they are by out-toughing teams. They're not going to be able to outscore Minnesota. They have to out-tough them. I think they can do that 7 games, but I could also see Minnesota, staying relatively hot and going the distance in the series just because they have been playing so well. I know recency bias is something to guard against, but if the way that they're going, they could pretty much they could win this series.
Absolutely. And I think this is one of the 2 first-round West series that are tough to pick. The other 2, I don't think they're as tough, Tom.
Not really. We got 2 games in the bag between the Warriors and the Nuggets, neither of them particularly close. Some tempers flaring out in Denver. So Warriors, granted, 2 games have been at home. Now they have to go to the Mile High City and put it all together there. Do you see Denver being able to extend the series, push it back to Cali for at least a game, or do you see this being a clean sweep up in the mountains?
Yeah, I think this is the really the only question in the series, to be honest. I mean, I think, is it going to be a sweep or not? Because I know they say a series doesn't start until someone wins a road game.
Yep.
But I just don't see how Denver is going to win a road game and win multiple home games either in this series. I mean, they are clearly overmatched here. And as we know, Denver had probably the most overachieving season in the NBA, given the injuries they had. Jokic was great the whole season. He's actually been very good the first 2 games, but when you go up against a legitimate team in a legitimate series, it becomes much harder to get those wins. Steph Curry, by the way, I thought he looked amazing in the last game. He scored over 30 points in 20 minutes. It's
34 points in 23 minutes.
That's incredible. That is incredible. It was actually the best field goal percentage he ever had in his playoff career. I think you got it pulled up. Was it 12 for 17? I'm talking off the top of my head. 12 for 17, 5 of 10 on threes. Very efficient game. Actually, I think he missed a couple of technical free throws.
Yep, 2 free throws.
So, which is the irony. That's not going to happen again. So I think Steph's had some injuries, but I think he's played in a lot of he's so used to playing in the playoffs that, like, assuming he's okay, which looks like he is, that injury almost was sort of a blessing for him. And it was a blessing for Jordan Poole. And I'll be talking a lot about that name, Jordan Poole, in the next 30, 40 minutes as we wrap up this program. Get prepared to hear his name a lot because I think Jordan Poole is a classic example of a player that is just better as a starter, a player that is just better when he gets his rhythm at the start of games. I know there's a lot of scorers like Jamal Crawford, Lou Williams. Those guys can come off the bench and be a walking bucket. Jordan Poole's a very different player. He's a guy that gets in a rhythm early. He's a very inconsistent player. I know the way he's playing right now, like he's not going to be that good throughout the whole series, but he does play way better as a starter. The start of this season, Jordan Poole was starting, did amazing. Klay Thompson comes back. Jordan Poole struggles. Less minutes, coming off the bench, less shots, less touches, struggles. Curry gets injured. Poole is back in the lineup. He dominates down the stretch. Guess what? Curry coming off the bench. Obviously, this is not going to happen, throughout the playoffs. He'll be starting maybe very soon here, actually. So what are they going to do with Jordan Poole is the question mark, because he is averaging right now. Let's see. I got it pulled up here. He is averaging 29.5 points per game, 25 for Steph, 20 for Klay. Steph and Poole shooting better than 50% from three, Klay in the mid 40s. I mean, those three guys together, when they're on, are unguardable because you cannot double team. You cannot, someone is going to be open and they move so well without the ball. It's a nightmare on your defense. Even if they're missing, that tires you out, having to fight all those screens. And I think Jordan Poole adds a special dynamic to the lineup. They're definitely going to win this series. The key is the Warriors will go as far as Jordan Poole and Steve Kerr go, because Steve Kerr is in a position right now to make a tough decision. And he has to make the decision of putting Jordan Poole in the starting lineup to play with Steph and Klay throughout most of the game. Now, who does he take out? Does he go uber small and take out Looney and literally go a very small lineup? Draymond Green as the center. Or does he take out Andrew Wiggins, who was an all-star this year? Those are the question marks that he has to answer himself, because the Warriors are clicking right now. Their ball movement, they're the most fun team to watch in the NBA right now. I watched the game last night. It was incredible to watch. So Warriors, I'll say they get it in 5. I think that Jokic is an MVP player. He'll find a way to get his team to win one game, but Golden State, shouldn't go back to Denver a second time. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I think this series, I'm actually leaning closer to a clean sweep simply because, I don't usually like to read into sideline body language narrative, that sort of thing.
Sure.
Because, you can definitely have a very public blow up in a, really emotional game. Tensions are running high. You can, address that stuff off court, come back and have a renewed sense of purpose and renewed, commitment to at least having some pride to winning at least one game in the series, not getting swept. It's, at the rate the Warriors are playing, it's kind of hard seeing them losing a game. I mean, they're shooting 52% from the field in both games. They're above 45%. Let me check. Okay. So 42.5% from three in game 2. So they're just shooting the ball incredibly well. So, if that keeps up in Denver, then yeah, this is going to be a 4-game series. I think the one way that Denver wins a game is, the Warriors simply stop hitting shots. And there's only so much Denver can do, both from a personnel standpoint, because they don't have the same level of talent that Golden State does, but also from a strategic standpoint. What we're seeing Golden State do a lot of is, making it a 5-out game, making Jokic, who is not a particularly mobile player, try to defend on the perimeter, something that he's not very good at doing. So when you give, we saw this with Kleber in Dallas, you give a not so great 3-point shooter a bunch of open looks, he'll probably knock down at least a couple more than he otherwise would. Now, when you do that with a team that's filled with guys that are already good at doing that with a hand in their face, they're only going to get that much better. So I'm a little more inclined to lean sweep on this one. Sure, Denver could go ahead, and tough their way to a single victory. But, just getting to this position where they're not in the play-in game, I think is a small moral victory. It's not going to feel that way, obviously, for the guys
Sure.
on that team, but when your starting five is Jokic, and then you've got, Monte Morris, Will Barton, Aaron Gordon, Jeff Green is the remaining starting five. It's like, that sounds like a lineup of like a superstar and a bunch of role players that you'd roll out in like an earlier era type of thing. I mean,
Sure.
Denver's just caught in a really bad matchup. If they're going up against, say, the Grizzlies, or if they're going up against Minnesota, for example, like there are certain other teams where Denver could match up much better that just got a really bad draw here. As far as the Kevon Looney thing, if Minnesota pulls off the upset, I could definitely see Golden State going super duper small and saying, okay, Draymond, you're going to be on Karl Anthony Towns because he wants to shoot outside anyway, and we're just going to have a game where over-unders are going to be set at like 300 points type of thing. Looney, I think, will be much more integral in the next series, just kind of battling against like Steven Adams if Memphis does in fact end up being the team coming out. But really like Golden State to sweep in this one.
Sure.
Maybe it goes 5, but I think a sweep.
Last series, Suns Pelicans 1-8 matchup. I'll just be real quick here. I like to go into depth, but there's not much to go into depth here. The team with the best record in the playoffs, the Suns' best record in the NBA. Pelicans, the worst record of any playoff team by far. Actually, they have one of the all-time worst records of any team to make the playoffs. I know they were better in the second half of the season. I know they played better in the second half of last game. But the Suns were up more than 20 during many parts of the game, game one. I think the Suns are way too good, way better of a team. Pelicans got no shot. I think this will be a clean sweep here for Phoenix in this series.
Yeah, I'm with agreement on you on that one. I mean, small caveat asterisk with the play-in series. Pelicans have the worst record. But if you go on straight up, if it were the old, 1-8 system, they wouldn't even be in the playoffs. So they had... they picked up their win against the Spurs, beat a 42-40 LA Clippers team to make it this far. I mean, when you have a game where, let me make sure I have this right, Jonas Valanciunas, 18 points, 25 rebounds. He actually had more offensive rebounds than defensive rebounds, and they still, with all of those second chance opportunities, only put up 99 points against Phoenix. This is just clearly one team is way, way better than the other. I think Phoenix is going to be able to cruise through this one. Chris Paul, go ahead, rest up, for the next series with plenty of time off because they're going to be looking at the winner of Utah and Dallas coming up. So I guess we can just flip right into that one. You've got Phoenix and Dallas. I have Phoenix and Utah. I think this is where our dissimilarities end as far as series picks go.
Yeah, I think Phoenix is definitely going to win that series. I mean, regardless of which one of those teams they play, which could be either one. I think they're better than both of those teams, significantly better overall team. I mean, it's tough to say like 1-2 duos who the best is, but like, I think that Durant and Kyrie are maybe the most talented, and maybe Embiid and Harden are in that discussion. But in terms of guys that we know can do it, that it works, you can make a case for CP3 and Devin Booker being the best 1-2 duo because they're both so clutch in the fourth quarter, and they just know how to play well together. They know how to win together. You look at the last 2 seasons, there's no team in the league that has more wins than the Suns. And quite honestly, like say it is the Jazz, the Suns would have the 2 best players in that series. And if it's the Mavs, like, yeah, Luka's great, but like, I can honestly sit here and say that DeAndre Ayton is better than the second best player on the Mavs. And I think obviously CP3 and Booker are better than, their options. I mean, I think Phoenix is significantly more talented, significantly better up and down. Bridges is a really good defensive player. I know he was one of the finalists for Defensive Player of the Year. Crowder, another proven veteran in the playoffs. Phoenix has a great squad. Also had an insane record on the road this year. So talk about a team that is good in the fourth quarter, good on the road, well coached. I think Phoenix cruises in the second round. I think we have a lot of tight series out in the East in the second round. I think Phoenix is going to cruise. And think about this. You mentioned Chris Paul, get your rest. Chris Paul is older. Let's not forget, like, he's still like as good as ever. Like, his passing is as good as ever. His shooting's as good as ever. His intelligence is as good as ever. Maybe he's lost a half step on quickness, but like he got tired in the NBA Finals. It's not so much that he played bad, but his aggressiveness was lower in the NBA Finals last year. And I think he knows that. So I think in these first two series where Phoenix is clearly better, I think his goal and Phoenix's goal is to end the series as quick as possible. So I can get my rest. And I think that's what they're going to do. I think this will be a 5-game series, regardless of who they play. Phoenix should cruise.
Yeah, I might even be tempted to say it's going to be another 4-game series for Phoenix. That's how much better they are. And it's also a testament to, you know, how well they match up. If it ends up being, you know, Utah, you've got, you know, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, you got Mikal Bridges. You got so many people you can put out on Donovan Mitchell. And then you can have DeAndre Ayton, who he's not a superstar big man, but there is a place in the NBA for really talented players who know that they're not superstars and know what their role is defined in the overall team construct. And Ayton fits that perfectly for Phoenix. So I wouldn't be surprised if they swept their way through not one but two series, which is really kind of like an odd thing. Like, we got so many deep, talented series in the East. And I feel like on the West Coast, we're just going to, you know, have a bunch of teams sitting around waiting for the next rounds to start. And, you know, hopefully not getting too rusty because we definitely want to see great basketball out of these guys. But I don't think it's going to be especially close. I mean, I think the same thing could be said for this next series of, you know, we both have Golden State and we both have Memphis in a close one, but we acknowledge it could also very well be Minnesota. I don't think this one, I could be crazy. I don't think this one's going to be especially close either.
You're not crazy. I agree.
Okay,
I'm
good.
looking at 4 or 5 games here as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you got the Warriors who have, you know, Steph, championship, multi-time champion, Clay, Draymond, Steve Kerr, the coach, Andre Iguodala, a role player. He's an NBA champ. I mean, it's going to be essentially, whether it's the Grizzlies or the Timberwolves, it's going to be a young, unproven team going up against a roster full of literally NBA champions in the Warriors. And I think the Warriors, like, it was such an up and down season. They got off to such a great start. I think they struggled in the middle of the season, but part of that was getting Clay incorporated. You know, Steph got hurt. Like, there was just a lot of like question marks looming there. Clay played great down the stretch. Looks like they got Jordan Poole, Clay, and Steph playing well together. Draymond's back where he can dish the ball to these guys. I mean, right now, Golden State, honestly, dare I say this, looks like the best team in the NBA right now. So I think they should have no problem in that second round against whatever young squad they end up facing.
Yeah, I like Golden State as well for all the reasons that you mentioned. They had an off year last season because of all the injuries that they suffered. Battled through this year. I think their record not as good as it otherwise would have been because, again, dealing with injuries. I see them advancing to this one and getting to, you know, the really, really tasty matchup that we're going to have in the Western Conference. We've got Golden State finished 11 games behind Phoenix for the division. Do you see them getting revenge? I think this is like the worst series for you to pick because you love both teams so much. You love both Chris Paul and Steph Curry so much. So where are you going on this one? I know where I'm going. I'm really intrigued to hear what you have to say.
So, Tom, to that point, you're definitely thinking, like, you know how I think? I'm going to read this verbatim. I have like,
okay.
I'm a note taker guy. Like, sometimes I'll do both bullet points. Sometimes I'll write out stuff and then I won't even read it, but I write it out so I can think it out to myself before the show. This is what I have written down here. My head and heart is split between Chris Paul and Stephen Curry. My favorite NBA players, you know, are Curry and LeBron, along with Giannis. And then Chris Paul is right there next to them and Luka. But what does Chris Paul have that those guys don't have? He doesn't have a ring and he doesn't have the youth to get it. CP3's chance at a ring is closing in. So, yes, I'm very split. I also love the two coaches, by the way. As men, Steve Kerr and Monty Williams, probably my two favorite coaches. As men, also great as just pure coaches, period. But you're right, Tom. My heart is split. My head is split. I think this is literally, you might as well flip a coin. I think these teams are so evenly matched. And I'm going to say something to you. And again, I might be caught up in the moment, but if you ask me on Sunday who I picked to win the championship, guess what my answer would have been?
Phoenix.
And what is my answer today on
Golden
Tuesday?
State.
Golden State to win the championship. I'll say this. The winner of this series is winning the championship. These two teams have better team chemistry and camaraderie. I know we talk about big twos, big threes. I know we have the Nets and Sixers over there, but I think that these two teams have just as much talent and they have more depth and better team chemistry. That the winner of the West, even though the East is oddly deeper, you look at the teams in the East seated, the third, fourth, and fifth Eastern Conference teams, I think, are better than the third, fourth, and fifth in the West. I think the best two teams in the West are better than the best in the East. It's a total toss-up, but I'm going to pick the Warriors because of Jordan Poole. I think that DeAndre Ayton, you mentioned, is a great fit as number 3, but right now it's the Splash Brothers have a third Splash Brother, Jordan Poole. Add him to the Splash Brothers, and if you watch the way Jordan Poole plays, he's literally a mini Steph Curry. He's the same way. He can pull up from any spot on the floor. He's got the fancy passes. He runs around screens. He shoots threes off the dribble. I mean, he is literally a mini Steph Curry. Imagine having to face him, who, by the way, Klay Thompson, what is Klay Thompson? A mini Steph Curry. We talk about the best shooter of the last 10 years. Who is it? Steph Curry. Who's the second best? Might be Klay Thompson. I saw an interview with Klay last year when he was hurt. They were talking about, what does he see in the Warriors? He's like, man, look out for this Jordan Poole guy. I was just practicing and did a drill with him. He beat me 3 out of 5 times in a 3-point shooting contest. So it's just, those three together are so fun to watch. And Draymond Green is the perfect glue. Draymond Green is worthless on a bad basketball team. He's good when he's asked to play defense. He's asked to pass the ball, and he's got 3 great players. Andrew Wiggins, by the way, if he plays, greatly improved outside shooter. I mean, and they can all knock down shots. I mean, it's going to go down to Steve Kerr literally have the toughness to go and make the tough decision and put Jordan Poole in the starting lineup. Because I think if Jordan Poole is in the starting lineup, the Warriors will win the finals. I know he's not going to be as great as these first 2 games. He's going to have one of those 1 for 13 games. It's going to happen. But is it going to happen consistently over 7 games? I don't think so. I think he's got the rhythm. Steph and Klay have the rhythm down right now. They're well rested. I love Golden State's ball movement. I just love the way they play. And they're going to be a nightmare for teams to defend. It's just, that squad right now is playing such good basketball. I know we talk about the Nuggets being overmatched, but I think what the Warriors are doing right now, they can do it against any team because they're just hitting some incredible shots, and just the pace of play they play with. It's awesome. And Phoenix could beat them. Like I said, it's a toss-up. But I actually think Curry's better than Chris Paul. I guess Booker's better than Poole and Klay, but I don't think the gap is as big as people think. I mean, and I think Poole's better than Ayton. And I actually look at the Warriors bench, who you never know who's going to be good. Bjelica's a really skilled big man who can pass and shoot. Otto Porter Jr., Gary Payton plays defense. I mean, Golden State was statistically, I think, what were they? Second best in points per game on defense this year. I had it written down maybe in one of my other segments, but I think they're second lowest points per game allowed. So I think their defense is greatly underrated. How are they second in points allowed despite playing that pace? That to me is crazy, something that doesn't get talked about enough. So I'm going to pick the Warriors, but I'll say this, if the Suns win, I won't be heartbroken because I think I would love to see CP3 get a ring. I think this Warriors team is too good. Again, it's going to be Curry's going to outshine CP3 and the Warriors make the finals. But that could be a 7-game series.
Mhm.
That's going to be a lot of great passing, a lot of great guard play. It's going to be so much fun to watch, regardless of what happens.
It is definitely going to be incredible. I like Golden State in 7 as well. Um, just because basically like the theme that I have kind of coming out for my NBA championship matchup is teams that have a ton of star power, probably worse off record wise that they were through the season because of injuries to said star power, now coming together for when it matters most. So I have Brooklyn against Golden State. You also have Brooklyn and
Of
Golden
course we
State.
do.
What
Of
does Drew
course.
have? Does Drew have Brooklyn and Golden State?
No, I think he has the Nets and Suns. Let me double check his text. I
Okay.
wrote it down somewhere, but I'm going to double check his text because this will be easier. He's got Suns versus Nets, and he's got the Nets winning the championship.
Okay, so thank goodness we have a little bit of variety on the
Yes, we
show as
do.
we get into this final matchup. But for me, I mean, just like I said, winner of Nets and Bucks is going to come out of the East. I think winner of Nets and Bucks is going to win the whole enchilada this year.
Okay.
Um, basically, it comes down to like, are the Nets going to be super duper talented and coming out and winning, or is it going to be the Bucks who are both very talented and exceptionally refined with how they all know their roles and playing together? I think that's going to be a really compelling matchup, either Milwaukee or Brooklyn against Golden State. But to have that storyline of Kevin Durant took a lot of flack, both going to Golden State, winning a couple championships there, and then even when he left Golden State, taking some flack on the way out. I think he's going to have a whole bunch to prove in terms of, yes, great teammates helped me win a championship. I have some different great teammates now that are going to help me win a championship.
Oh
So I'm
man.
going to go with Brooklyn in this one. I'm going to stick with my preseason pick, as Drew is also doing. Don't feel as good about this one as I did about the LA Rams winning the Super Bowl, just because there is so much that is still going to happen. But I'll go ahead and take Brooklyn over Golden State in what's going to be a really, really fun NBA Finals.
For the record, I'm like 95% sure I also had the Nets in my preseason pick. Isn't that right? To win it all?
I'd have to go back to an earlier. I think Drew had Nets. I think both you and Drew maybe had Nets and Warriors preseason.
I
And then
had the Nets
I
winning.
I had Nets Nuggets, and Porter Jr. got injured and Jamal Murray never came back, so that didn't
Sure.
really age well.
I'm pretty sure that I had the Nets preseason, which is crazy that all three
Possibly,
of us
yeah.
would have had Nets preseason. I'm actually going to finally throw like a wrench in you and I's chemistry on picks here.
Mhm.
I'm actually going to pick the Warriors. I'm going to
Sure.
say, and I'm going to say the opposite of what you said. You said the winner of the Nets or Milwaukee like wins the finals. I agree with you. The winner of that series makes the finals over
Mhm.
Philly. I'm going to say the winner of Phoenix or Golden State wins the finals. I think because those two teams have the perfect mix of star power and role players.
Yep.
I think that Phoenix has really good role players in Bridges and Crowder and etc. The Warriors, like Jordan Poole, I think is a star these days, but I mean, they got proven role players. Andre Iguodala is a former champion. It seems like whatever team Andre Iguodala's on seems to always make the finals. Don't forget he was on that Miami Heat team that made the finals.
Sure.
There's a sort of like unproven like leadership and locker room presence. I just feel like there's some Iguodala magic out there. And don't be surprised if the former finals MVP, maybe he hits a key shot, makes a key play
And
in a
wins
key
his finals
moment.
MVP again?
I don't think that's going to happen. But there's something to be said. Warriors, by the way, third best in the league in defense in points per game. So actually, that's where I think the difference is going to be. The Warriors third best. Nets were 18th in defense in the league. So I think Golden State has more depth. Also, a lot of good young players. I mean, Gary Payton coming off the bench. The third, they got Kuminga coming off the bench. I mean, they got all these young players. You talk about the Nets guys like LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, DNPs. I mean, DNPs for a reason. They're old geezers. Give me the youth coming off Golden State's bench. And that's what makes Golden State so fun to watch because they have great athletes coming off the bench. And it's like, yeah, maybe they don't shoot as well, but They're up and down the court, their style, it works for 48 minutes. That's what makes them really fun. I think that'd be a wild NBA Finals. Like, you have the whole story of Steph versus Kyrie. We've seen that. And obviously the biggest story, Durant against the Warriors. And what's that saying? They said, if you can't beat them, join them. Durant couldn't beat him with OKC. Not going to beat him with the Nets this time around either. Give me the Warriors in what could be a 7-game series. It's going to be a great NBA Finals. I do want to say this too. I think Stephen Curry finally wins that NBA Finals MVP. He's won multiple MVPs regular season. He's won the All-Star Game MVP. He did that this year, by the way. And he's won multiple championships, but never the Finals MVP. He got robbed by Iguodala. Just highway robbery. We're going to give it to Iguodala because he plays defense. LeBron averaging a triple-double. I mean, come on now. What are we doing? What are we doing? In the words of Taylor Twellman. But I do think that Steph Curry finally gets that Finals MVP. He actually was probably the better player that first year they won with Durant. He probably had a better overall series. He had one really bad game, and Durant had one amazing game. You take out that game that the two had, Curry actually was better during the rest of that series. So I think he's going to get his Finals MVP. And I think it's going to be kind of ironic because this was, quite frankly, since he entered his prime, obviously probably a higher level than rookie second-year Steph Curry. But since he entered his prime, this has actually been Steph Curry's worst NBA season. If you look at his field goal percentages, you look at just his statistics and his efficiencies, probably his worst season, but he had his best All-Star game ever, and I think he's going to have his best NBA Finals ever because as great as he's been unbelievable in the playoffs. He seems to have just been slightly off in the finals. Like, I do think he should have won Finals MVP the Iguodala season, but if you look at his numbers, his Finals numbers have not been on par with his other playoff and regular season numbers. I think he's due for a big Finals. Steph Curry wins MVP, Warriors in 7. Woo! Let's get it.
Well, that wraps it up for our NBA coverage. We touched on every series. Going to be a ton of fun to see how everything concludes. Hopefully we get some entertaining series, as I think currently we only have... Do we even have a series where each team has won at least one game? Jazz Mavs, that's another one. So we'll see. Hopefully first round gets us some more intriguing matchups, but definitely going to be fun to watch. Go ahead.
Yeah, one final thing. Sorry, Tom. Sure. One final thing. I want to say this. In the history of the NBA, we've never had what we have this season. I think we have 7 teams that are capable of winning the championship. Sure. 7. I think we've got 5 in the East. We both have Boston out in the first round. Boston is capable of winning the whole thing. They, by the way, are number 1 defense in the league statistically. So we got the Nets, the Sixers, the Heat, the Celtics, and the Bucks, all in the East who can win the championship. And then the Warriors and the Suns in the West. I think we have 7 teams who can legitimately win the championship this year. I don't think I've ever gone into a playoff year where I can say that is the case.
Yeah, no, a lot of parity makes it a lot of fun to watch, especially as, it gives these earlier round games a lot more significance across the board. So let's move into locks of the week. I believe last week, Commander, you both were 2-1. I was 1-2. You want to run the recap, and then we'll get into our picks for this upcoming week.
All right, let's run it back. Drew Brackett, first place in the standings. I think he passed you up after this week. He might have been a half game ahead last week.
He was a half game ahead. Yeah,
he's doing great. 2-1. He had Diego Schwartzman and Martin Fucsovics under 20.5 games. Correct. 6-0, 7-6 Schwartzman. So 20 total games. Got it by a half game. One more game, and he was toast. He missed his Devils and Coyotes under 6.5 goals. 6-2 Devils in that game. 8 total goals. Tottenham Brighton under 2.5 goals. He was correct. Brighton getting the 1-0 upset. Tom, you were 1-2. You had the Jazz minus 4.5 over the Mavs in game 1. You were correct. The Jazz winning 99-93. You had Bucks minus 10 over the Bulls. They got off to an 11-0 run, but couldn't keep it going. The Bucks winning 93-86. So Bucks winning, but not covering. And then you had a plus 400 parlay that almost hit. And what I tell you as soon as you made it, I said you'd go 3 for 4. I was like, all of your picks make sense, but it's hard to get them right.
Mm-hmm.
You had Nets, Hawks, T-Wolves, and Clippers all advancing out of the play-in tournament. Nets, Hawks, T-Wolves obviously did. Clippers did not. Might have if Paul George played. Might have if they didn't have a fourth quarter collapse. But they did. You were 1 and 2. That's what happened. We made those picks prior to the Paul George injury. We do have a weekly show we do. So sometimes we get barbecued by things that happen later in the week. I'd also argue, though, that in some ways you got unbarbecued because I think the Mavs probably would have covered had Doncic not played, and it wasn't official at the time. So,
or I would have had a tougher number.
That evens out, but nonetheless, overall a winning week for the show. Overall, as a show, we have a winning record on the season, so this is a great place to get your locks of the week. I'm going to run through Drew's picks first, and then Tom will go over to you, and I will wrap it up with my picks. So Drew likes to go different sports. He's going some tennis, the Barcelona Open. Barca Open, baby. Visca Barca. I'm a Barca fan, despite their treacherous game last week against Frankfurt and the follow-up loss against Cadiz in La Liga. Heartbreaking stuff. But nonetheless, Barcelona players were at that Barca Open, and Drew's got a little bit of Bulgarian flavor to his picks. So I saw he must have done this on purpose. He sees there's a Bulgarian tennis player. I'm Bulgarian, of course. Grigor Dimitrov, as you would say in Bulgarian. I've got him on a mug. I've got his mug. I got it when I visited Bulgaria a couple years ago. Drew's got Mr. Dimitrov versus Federico Correa under 21.5 games. And then Drew, of course, is going MLS over under. He's got FC Dallas and Houston Dynamo under 2.5 goals. And how about this? A little NASCAR in the show. The Geico 500. He's got Joey Logano at minus 120 to finish better than Brad Keselowski. There you go, Drew.
All right. So for my locks of the week, I'm going all NBA. None of the games tonight will start with April 20th. Give me Nets plus 3.5 on the road in Boston. KD will not shoot 9 for 24 from the field again. Other role players had better step up. It was basically Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and not a whole lot else. So I like the Nets to cover that number. 76ers, I'll have them covering a 1.5 point spread of Caesars Sportsbooks. They won by 15 and 20 at home. I do not think home court is worth 15 points, so I'll take the 76ers to cover. And then this might sound familiar. On the 21st, this upcoming Thursday, Warriors, I'll have them covering minus 1.5 on the road. Won by 16 and 20. I don't think home court is worth 15 points. I'll take the Warriors to cover.
Wow, Tom, it's funny that like the stuff that you listed, I have one of those same picks, and I actually was looking at both of those other two picks. And if I had to pick, I would agree. I just get very wary. Like game 3 on the road just makes me nervous when they switch arenas and what's going to happen. But if I was going with my gut, like my feeling, like I do think those two road lines are toss-ups. But if I was going with my gut, I would say you're going 3-0 this week because I agree with all of your picks. So I did have one of the same, of course. Nets plus 3.5 at the Celtics. This is funny, Tom. What was your line about Kevin Durant?
He will not shoot 9 of 24 from the field, and other role players will step up.
All right, this is what I have written down. Kevin Durant was 9 for 24 in game 1 with 6 turnovers. That will not happen again. It is literally almost the same thing you have written down. We're thinking a lot alike this show. Thankfully, we did pick a different champion. I have the Nets. They covered game 1, that 4.5 point line, losing by 1 point at the buzzer beater. Despite KD's bad play, despite the Celtics having 4 guys get 20 or more points. How often does that happen in an NBA game? Not often. Tatum had 31 points, shooting 50% from the floor. The Nets know this is a huge game. I mean, if they're going to win this series, they can come back from down 2-0, but it makes it very hard. I think they're not only going to cover, I actually think they're going to win this game. I think that the Nets are the more talented team. Kyrie tends to play great against Boston, and Kevin Durant's going to bounce back. There's no way he's going to be that bad in the next game. So at the very least, I feel really safe with those 3.5 points. Even if they lose, it should go down to the last possession. So give me the Nets plus 3.5 against the Celtics. I'm going to go, let's see. I had a couple of things written down. I did think about that Sixers line, but I'm not going to go with that. I'm going to go with one tonight. I got the Suns minus 9.5 over the Pelicans. 3 of the 4 regular season meetings between these two teams, the Suns won by double digits. They won game 1 by double digits. So what does that tell me? 80% chance the Suns have a double-digit win. I like those odds.
Sure.
Good second half for the Pelicans in game 1, made it a little bit closer. But, I mean, the Suns were up more than 20 in game 1. Much harder to take the foot off the gas pedal when you're up 20 and to make it down to 11 points. I mean, it's a 64-18 team against the 36-46 team. Enough said. I think the Suns also want to get the sweep. We talked about it earlier. CP3 wants to rest up. Doesn't want to get tired deep in the playoff run. So I like the Suns winning by double digits, minus 9.5 over the Pelicans. And you had a theme. You had 2 minus 1.5 games. I'm going to go with 2 minus 9.5 games. I like the Bucks minus 9.5 over our Bulls. Bucks have won 17 of the last 18 meetings in this head-to-head series, counting game 1 of the playoffs. 12 of those 18 have been by double figures. The lone game the Bulls won, Giannis didn't play, Middleton didn't play, Holiday didn't play. Just a brutal matchup for the Bulls. They don't have anyone to stop Giannis. He had 27 points and 16 rebounds in game 1, despite having 5 fouls. Imagine if Giannis didn't have 5 fouls. The Bulls lost by 7 in game 1. I can see 3 more points making a double figures in game 2. I know the Bulls shot really bad that game, but so did the Bucks. 10 of 38 on threes, 15 of 23 from the line. Yeah, DeRozan's going to shoot better for Chicago, but I think that all of Milwaukee's role players, Middleton, Holiday, superstar level guys, Bobby Portis, role player, Brook Lopez, all those guys are going to shoot better than 10 of 38 on threes and 15 of 23 from the line. So give me the defending champs to win by 10 or more against the Bulls, like they did in the last 2 regular season meetings between these two teams. So Bucks minus 9.5 over the Bulls, Suns minus 9.5 over the Pelicans, and the Nets plus 3.5 at the Celtics. If you want to get adventurous and get yourself better odds, some plus money, I would say bonus pick, take the Nets straight up. Take the Nets straight up in that game, because I do think the Nets win game 2 in Boston.
All right. Looking forward to all those matchups this week. We have trivia up next. I've got, I think it's a pretty difficult one. Of course, baseball related, if you're interested.
Absolutely. Why don't you start? Because I've got one that you might get, but I like doing my trivia timely, but let's get started with yours first.
All right, so mine is, kind of sort of timely. On this day, April 19th, I'm going to take you back to the year 1900.
Oh, boy.
It's
very
opening day baseball.
Ty Cobb.
And
Wagner.
This game is famous for being the highest scoring opening day game in baseball history from literally 122 years ago. So, can you give me the total runs scored for the game? Bonus points if you can split it between the two teams, but just how many total runs were scored? This was a 10-inning game. It went to extras.
Okay.
So that's a little bit of a hint. And then bonus points if you can give me the 2 teams that played. I'll give you a hint. Both teams are in existence, although not necessarily in the same location.
Okay. So I'm going to go with, it's got to be the Detroit Tigers is one of them. They were good back in the day. Not the Detroit Tigers. They're the original teams. White Sox or Cubs are some of my other guesses.
No, they're not in it.
Let's see. It's got to be the. Let's see, the Giants.
Mm-mm.
Not the Giants. The Dodgers.
No.
Brooklyn Dodgers. No, not Brooklyn.
No.
Weren't they the Brooklyn Dodgers?
They were the Brooklyn Dodgers
That's
at the
where
time,
I was
but
thinking.
they're not the team that moved, so to speak.
New York Yankees.
No.
Milwaukee Braves. Weren't the Braves in Milwaukee at one point?
That is one team. They were in Boston at that point in time. So you have one of the two teams.
Okay, so Boston Braves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm trying to think if Boston would have been National League at the time, or were they American
I think
League?
so. I think they were National League because when they went to Milwaukee and then to Atlanta, they were all still National League. So that's where this other team is as well.
So it's National League. Well, that's what I'm saying, because back then you played your league.
Yep.
You didn't have cross-divisional. You had the pennants. So I'm going to go with the Boston Braves.
They would face this team a lot this year, too.
Baltimore?
Nope. It's in their
the
division.
Braves would. The Braves would.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, New York Mets.
Nope.
Philadelphia Phillies.
Philadelphia Phillies and the Boston Braves. So if you can give me the total number of runs scored, I'll give you the breakdown on that one.
39, 22. No. Change that.
A little
42.
lower.
Oh, lower? Okay.
Lower, yeah.
34, I'll say. No, 33. I'll go with. God, I got to do math now. Thanks, Tom. 17-16. 17-16.
You're pretty close on that one. It was 19-17.
There you go.
26 total runs scored with the Phillies beating the Braves.
36, right?
No.
I think you just said 26. Sorry to
Did I
cut you
say
off
26? No, you're good. That means I cannot do math. 36 runs scored in an opening day game. Most ever scored on an opening day. I don't know if that's something that's ever going to get touched with the way that like cold weather and everything, which we'll touch on in a little bit. I just thought that was really, really incredible as far as stats go, because older baseball, not necessarily known for being as high scoring, but I guess nobody wanted to stop running the bases that day.
Guess not. People don't run the bases enough these days, by the way. But all right, sports trivia. Mine is timely. It's NBA related.
Cool.
We had Jordan Poole in his first playoff game. I think he had 30 points. I know for a fact Anthony Edwards had 36 points in his playoff debut. Tied for the fourth most ever. Anthony Edwards tied for the fourth most ever. I think D Rose, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar also had 36 in their playoff debut. You might remember that. Rose against the Celtics, I think it was. You know what? I think you're going to get the first guy. I don't think you would get the second and third. So I'm going to make this a bonus trivia question. Can you name the three guys with more points in their playoff debut than Anthony Edwards' 36 that he had against the Grizz? I think you should get one of them.
I think I should, because I'm thinking Michael Jordan, because he had like a really impressive debut. Didn't he?
Not Michael Jordan.
Not Michael Jordan. More points in a playoff debut. I feel like maybe like somebody like a Carmelo Anthony.
Not Carmelo Anthony.
No. LeBron?
Nope. Two of these guys, I think one of them you may never have even heard of. One of them, the guy who's in third, you would have heard of him, but man, it was a long time ago.
Well, like George Mikan, Bob Pettit.
Tom Castleman, George Mikan.
Awesome.
37 points in 1949.
Oh, man.
37 points against
still
Chicago.
Using peach baskets back then.
That's right. George Mikan, baby. I think he was on the Lakers when they were in Minneapolis. I'm terrible at saying that.
Minneapolis, yeah.
Yeah, George Mikan. 37 points at the time was the record for most points in a playoff debut. That has since been surpassed by two men.
Okay. Playoff debut, ton of points.
Okay, so I'm going to say the
Allen
second,
Iverson.
not Allen Iverson. So the second guy, I'm 90% sure you're not going to get, but you are a historian of the game.
I am.
So I'm going to give you a few clues.
Mhm.
I will even give you the season and the team and the position. I still don't think you're going to get it because I'll be completely honest with you, Tom. I'm a huge historian myself. I had never heard of this guy up until I looked up this trivia question. So you might be in trouble.
Is it Detlef Schrempf?
Not Detlef Schrempf. I have heard of him.
Okay.
Former Sixth Man of the Year star in Parks and Rec, by the way, also. No, this was a guy who played in 1979 for the Nets. He was a shooting guard. Has a very, very, very common first name and a pretty common last name as well. Not an all-time great basketball player, which is why, again, that is why it would be surprising. 1979 for his career. So he actually played in the ABA as well as the NBA. That is perhaps why he isn't as well known. Career averages about 17.5 points per game, ABA and ABA. He's a two-time ABA champ. Did not win an NBA title. Didn't get a ton of rebounds, a ton of assists. Very solid scorer, but not a historically all-time great player.
I'll go with one guess, and then I'll have you give me the answer. Is it Lloyd Daniels?
No, John Williamson.
Oh, yeah, I never would have gotten that.
I haven't heard of him. So, all right, the number one guy you should get. You should get. This is a guy that you definitely have seen him play many times, or at least a decent amount of times. There are other clues I can give, but I'm trying. There's so many clues here that would give it away. There are so many clues that would give it away.
Debut, most points. Like, is it Shaq?
Not Shaq.
Can I have a decade?
Current decade.
So within the past couple of years, then.
Oh yeah, that gives it away even more.
Why is that?
Current decade, though.
Why is this so difficult for me to think?
You should know it if you follow what we've talked about on this program, especially.
Oh, Jordan Poole.
Not Jordan Poole. He just had 30. He had 30, which is among the best, but not the most.
Devin Booker. I am not doing well in this exercise.
Even better than Devin Booker, which should also be a clue that helps you a lot because it is definitely a bona fide superstar.
Ja Morant?
No.
Man, I'm just embarrassing myself at this point.
You can do this, Tom.
Oh, playoff debut. So nobody on the Timberwolves. Nobody on the Nets. Maxey?
Obviously an active player.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm brain farting on this one.
Technically, this is, and again, I might be off by a week or two, but he wears the same number as this is our official show. I don't know if you know, I make my notes based on whatever week number of our show this is. We obviously did this show in college for a few years, but since we reunited this back in 2020, this is actually the same week of the show that this is as the number that the player wears. Unique number. What NBA current star wears a unique number? Now I got to make sure he wears this number. I'm pretty sure he does.
Because we're somewhere like in the 60s, right? For
higher.
Weeks we've been doing the show? 70s?
Oh, higher. Tom, you're disappointing me, man. You've done much better with
Luka,
tougher
77.
questions. Luka Doncic.
77, yeah.
I've got this as unofficially week 77 of Salute Your Sports. Emphasis on unofficially because I know there's some weeks where we did March Madness shows and I may have just skipped over it. But if anything,
I missed one.
We're actually higher than 77, if anything. I know we had a couple weeks where we did 2 shows, but technically it's the same week. But unofficially, week 77 of doing this show, we did have a few weeks where we didn't do a show also. But yeah, Luka Doncic, 42 points against the Clippers in the bubble 2020. Remember that?
That's probably why, like, that was just a weird time to be alive. Yeah, no, I really should have done better with that given all the clues, but yeah.
That's all right. And it's crazy because it's interesting that the NBA ratings were not great in the bubble, even though like everyone should be at home watching basketball. I saw something on Twitter that this was the NBA's best start to a playoff weekend since 2011 as far as ratings. So the NBA is doing quite well in the playoff ratings of this season. March Madness had good ratings as well. So kind of weird that people now all of a sudden are watching sports again, and they're watching it at a higher level than they did during the pandemic. Make it make sense, but that's how it is.
I mean, it was also like summertime. We didn't have vaccinations yet, so summer was like the one time that we could all like get outside and be a lot more healthful and socially distant and everything like that. And like, yeah, it was just like a weird time. We all watched. Didn't Last Dance get like higher ratings or something like that at one point?
Really
like that was a national just flashpoint as far as like culture goes and everything.
I gotta rewatch that. I gotta rewatch it a second time. I haven't done a second watch.
I want more Phil Jackson. I want to hear more of what he has to say. Anyway,
read his book. Have you read it?
I've not read. I'm not really a big sports book reader, but I should probably do that. I should add that to my list.
I can probably lend it to you if you would like, because I have it. It is a great read. It's very interesting about the psychology of sports, which I think beyond the economics of sports, which I know interests you, I feel like you would also be interested in the psychology of sports. A lot of stuff about Dennis Rodman gets mentioned in the book. Derek Fisher is a guy that Phil Jackson absolutely loves, by the way. Probably comes as no surprise to you, but yeah, very interesting read for sure.
Absolutely. Well, salutes and statements. I'm going to send a quick salute out to 16 members of a Monmouth University Law and Society course who, along with their professor, have submitted an 82-page document to current MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred to make a case for hang on, let me make sure I have this. Armando Galarrega's near perfect game. I believe that also happened on this date, April 19th, where he was 1 out away from having a perfect game. Bouncer to Miguel Cabrera in the hole between first and second base. Pitcher covers. Yep. Bang, bang play, not super bang, bang, like fairly, like half a step, quarter of a step difference. James Joyce, the umpire, calls him safe when he should have been out. Both the batter, the umpire admitted after the game, like, yeah, that was the wrong call. MLB did not elect to overturn it. And so now an 82-page document is being sent to the MLB League office trying to reverse the outcome, or at least reverse the outcome of that particular play. The game ended 3-0. It ended up on a ground ball the next batter anyway. So an all but one perfect game for Armando Galarrega. So a salute to a law school saying, hey, let's kind of like poke at the law and see what we can do, especially for something that wasn't necessarily, like world changing. It didn't affect the outcome of the game itself, just the accomplishment that, quite frankly, a journeyman pitcher at the time would have achieved. And then I'll just jump right into statement because that's also baseball related. White Sox have their second game in a row snowed out in Cleveland. We talked a little bit about this with the lockout that was going on. There are too many weathered out games in April, a month that already has a lot of off days built into it. Let's shorten the season, have it start in May so that these players have like consistent regular schedules. If you want to keep the games closer to 162, make a designated doubleheader day or something like that. Make a Saturday or a Sunday, like a big family day at the park. Do something like that where more people are going to want to go to these games. And more of these games, quite frankly, are going to just get played and get done under the schedule. We have too many days that are now going to become doubleheaders later on in the season, shorten it all up to begin with, get everybody playing baseball in warm weather and attending games in warm weather. I think that's going to be a lot more fun all around to have a May opening day as opposed to, late March, early April, and then have a bunch of games that have really wet, rainy, snowy, just yucky conditions for like half the country, if not more.
So a couple of things we're definitely thinking a lot alike today because I completely agree with you on both statements. Want to address them both real quickly. First off, it's interesting about that perfect game you referenced. As soon as you said it, I knew exactly what you were talking about. Just something that really sticks out. Obviously, that was before the replay reviews. Now in MLB, they do have replay reviews. Had we had replay reviews at the time, the perfect game would have stood. That obviously, I'm sure, is part of the argument. I don't know how they came up with 82 pages. That's the question mark. I feel like it should be as simple as like it was a perfect game. It didn't change the outcome of the game. Had we had review, it would have been a perfect game.
They got to do all the legalese and
82 pages, man.
That's here withins and thereby fours and all sorts of pursuant to.
I know your wife works for a law firm. I know more on the marketing side, I believe. But yeah, I'm sure she could probably tell you more about that language. That sounds crazy to me. So as far as the MLB, yeah, I agree. It's funny that you say that because I had two thoughts this weekend about that exact same topic. So first off, I was at my girlfriend's aunt's house, and they're huge White Sox fans. I actually was watching the PSG game on my phone and then the Nets game on my phone, but also watching the White Sox game on the TV in the background during this Easter party. And there was very, very few people at the White Sox game. And you look at Jose Abreu, like he was like completely covered up. I mean, Jimenez too, like they had that whole, like, what's that, like black stuff that they extended up on the uniform. I think
the gator mask.
Like, and then like one of them even had the sunglasses. So you literally could not see like an inch of their face, just like completely miserable. There was almost no fans at the game whatsoever. And then I had a coworker that went to the Cubs game yesterday. And in my head, it's like, why in the world? Like obviously, I don't know, like, what his tickets are, what he has. Like if I were given a free ticket to a sports game, I would go to that baseball game for free. However, I would not pay to go to a baseball game in this weather. Like think about this. Like realistically, unless you're a season ticket holder, you're going to pick what? 1 to 2 ball games to go to in a year. I'm going to pick that like when it's nice out. I'm not going to a ball game in April. Forget opening day. I don't care. I'm not there to freeze my butt off. I think that would be better for the fans and the teams. And I love the idea that you said, as soon as you brought it up, my first thought was, I don't want less games. I like having the statistics. You know me, I'm a huge statistician. I don't like, guys in this era will have way less stats, and what stats mean in one era and another era is way different if we have less games. However, I do think we need to have more double headers. The season is too long. As it is for baseball, I think there's too many people that don't care what goes on. It doesn't have to be a 6-month deal. I'm not saying maybe they can do a doubleheader every day. Maybe it's every other day, but have 162 games, but start the season in May, as you said, Tom, maybe even in June. Honestly, I'm not against starting the season in June because by then your NBA finals are wrapping up. I mean, for me, Champions League soccer has wrapped up. I mean, I think you have a little bit of the NBA finals, but you're not fighting with that as much for ratings. You're going to have more eye on your product. You're already going to lose during the NFL, no matter what you do. And you have to have it coincide with the NFL a little bit. But, start the season in June when the weather is nice. And for me, it's like, I hate this too. Like, I guess you've experienced this maybe a little bit as a student TV reporter in college, but I've experienced it professionally working as a sports TV reporter, anchor, shooter, photographer. How you do everything in sports TV. I've experienced shooting college baseball games in February, and I get it. Like part of that is, like they've got a summer, they got to end the season when the college season ends. But like, I was like, you got to have less games or more doubleheaders or whatever. Like Tom, I've shot baseball in 15-degree weather in late February. We have these college kids starting in February. I repeat, February. That is just mind-boggling. We should not be playing baseball in February. It's just crazy. So I agree with you. Start the season later. Let's do more double headers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Kudos to you for pronouncing both R's, by the way, throughout the tirade. I commend you.
I'm huge on that. Very few people agree with that. I don't know if you remember, I had a story at KOMU.
It's not a matter of agreeing or not.
It's accurate.
It's a clear right and wrong. Yeah.
It's February, but I actually polled people. So Tom, it's funny you say that because I did a sports feature when I was at KOMU, the NBC affiliate in college. And I did a story where I said February, like I voiced it in the voice track saying like it was a kid had cancer in February. He returned like several months later or whatever it was. And someone's like, no, it's February. So I went up to people and I asked them, what is it? And I probably asked about 50 people, Tom. You know how I am when I get in a tirade. And I would say roughly 40 out of 50, about 80% said it's February. Very few had the R. I'm glad that you and I are in lockstep. I guess it's kind of fitting to the show. We're very much in agreement, minus our finals champion. And for the record, your champion might be right. I'm not highly confident in mine. But February,
it'll be fun to see, yeah.
Speaking of my NBA champion, I know I mentioned this earlier, but I cannot reiterate this enough. I feel so passionate on this matter, Tom. The Golden State Warriors have to start Jordan Poole when Curry gets back in the starting lineup. That death lineup, Jordan Poole has played way better as a starter than a bench player this season. He is simply more comfortable starting in the game. He's more comfortable getting more minutes, getting more looks, getting his rhythm early. He's a streak shooter that needs enough shots, enough minutes, and enough of those early in the game to get going. So here's the statement. Steve Kerr has to drop somebody, whether it's going to be Kevon Looney, whether it's going to be Andrew Wiggins. I don't know what he's going to do. And maybe I didn't mention this enough in my finals argument, but DeAndre Ayton's very good. I'm not saying he's not a good player. I'm not saying that he's not going to eat if he's going up against smaller guys. But the Suns' best players, who are they? Booker and Paul. That's how they win games. You go small against a team that also is relatively small, at least when it comes to its star players. That's the way to go. So the statement is, if the state is a two-part statement. One, Steve Kerr, you got to have the cojones to go with Jordan Poole in the starting lineup, even if that means going super small, even if that means having to bench Andrew Wiggins, who was an all-star this year. I think it would be Wiggins or Looney, but who knows? Maybe it's Draymond Green. I don't know what he's going to do, but he's got to put Poole in the lineup. So the statement is, Steve Kerr, do the right thing. And the second statement is, if Steve Kerr puts Jordan Poole in the starting lineup, the Warriors are going to win the championship. It's going to be impossible, to guard those guys off screens. Steph, Clay, and Poole, the guys can shoot the ball. The Warriors are going to win the championship if Jordan Poole is a starter, because he is an all-star level player. I know consistency is an issue, but I think if he's a starter for 82 games next year, I think he could be a guy that is an all-star. I'm not saying he's going to be, a main all-star, but I think he is good enough to be a top 20, 25 player in this league. And if the Warriors recognize that and put him in the starting lineup, they're going to win the whole thing.
Absolutely. It's going to be that fine line of walking of, how do you manage your superstars' egos? How do you do what's best for the team to win? It'll be interesting to see Kerr manage that. It's a shame how many talented players he has to choose from.
It's a shame, but hey, he's done it before.
Absolutely.
He's done it before. You got to have the right guy for that system. Steve Kerr may not necessarily be per se, I feel like he's a master of managing egos and a master of managing style of play. And by that, I don't necessarily mean X's and O's and in-game adjustment. I believe that his expertise and style of play is kind of letting the players just have fun and do the style of play the way they do it. And I think he's going to, make the right move here. Definitely looking forward to these NBA playoffs. more than maybe any year, just because of just the sheer amount of exciting stuff we're going to have in the second round. And like, no matter what happens, like in the Eastern Conference finals are going to be bananas. The Western Conference finals are going to be bananas. It's going to be wild. I can't wait, baby. In the words of Bart Scott, can't wait. Tell him, Bart. Tell Sal Balantonio what's up.
Well, I'm sure like all of our fans at home watching, they can't wait for Salute Your Sports to come back next week. We're going to have the NFL draft to talk about as one of our main topics. I'm sure we'll be touching on any big things that come out of the NBA with a couple of series. You know, obviously it's early. We might see a couple of surprises along the way. Maybe so much as our Eastern Conference champions already down and out.
Or your NBA champ even.
Or NBA champion,
yeah.
Universally, it's Eastern Conference, so we'll stick with that one.
We'll see.
But yeah, definitely lots of topics to talk about next week as well, so looking forward to it.
All right, Tom, thank you very much. I will see you next week. Thank you very much to all the listeners and viewers. You guys are what makes this fun for us. I will see you next week, and we'll be back next week. Have a good one.